It's time for our crime drama. We've just had a cold open. Someone's been murdered! It's time for the cool, emotionally distant, middle-aged male lead. With his kooky sidekick. And we're gonna solve some crimes. NCIS. Welcome, one and all. Oh my goodness. I'm tired, and I think it's the heat. It is currently like 27 degrees Celsius inside. The heat is beating down on us here like nobody's business. Can you be the kooky sidekick? Sure thing. Well, I'm the lead. I mean, we know this. But yeah, it's hot. I'm exhausted from just the heat alone. We're gonna have an interesting stream. It's gonna be fine. Welcome, one and all. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back to the Everything GM broadcast. Today we're doing some reading. If you're watching in the VOD, it's great to have you. If you're live, if you're active in chat, if you're not active in chat, if I'm on in the background, I don't mind. It's just wonderful to spend some time with you. Thanks for making me a part of your day. If you haven't joined the Discord yet, you should. There's a link in the chat and then links down below as well. If you have joined the Discord and you want to contribute to that Everything Fund, that is a little bit of money for people to spend on fun stuff that they may not necessarily have the money for right now, then please consider donating to that. What else is... I think people have mostly forgotten that it exists, to be honest. As for me... Oh... Shit, there's a whole welcome message. Yeah, put your mental health, physical health in chat out of 10. Let me know how your day has been. Wherever you are in the world, no matter how you're doing, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for being here and choosing to spend time here. Heroine is here as well. Good. Hi. Hello, Taters. Hello, Alpherg. You can be the emotionally deep comic relief, yes. We're doing some reading today. It's time for another reading corner. Today is, I'm not sure who we're going to read, because I haven't actually checked if there's any new stuff to read, which is very professional of me, I know. If I have a look at the writing area of the Discord... I believe we've read... Oh! We've done, Alex is busy writing something, but I don't know if I want to read it without their, like, just in case it's not, just in case it's not complete yet. If they don't want us to read, like, the progress, then yeah. Getting work done on my car out of 10. Whew, scared it's going to be expensive out of 10. I understand. I totally get it. Car repairs are out of this world, man. It's crazy. 8 out of 10. I sneakily did a little yoga stretching this morning when you were in sleep. Yay! Very cool. Good job. That's awesome. Very, very nice. That's why I slept late today, because you made the vibes of the house so peaceful that I just didn't want to get up. I've got an update to mine. It's really just a revised version. Oh, sick! Also, you are actually here. Hello. Hello, sir.
Hello, madam.
How was your day?
It was pretty good.
Good. What kind of stuff are you doing to your car?
Well, there's a squeaking sound now.
A squeaking sound? That's not good.
Engine light is on.
Oh no, the check engine light?
Start.
Ooh, and it just, it won't start? Ugh. Bad. Feels bad. Oh, we got a thing from Rain as well. Very interesting. Okay, I can do that. I don't know if Rain specifically asked for this to actually be done. Let me see if they're up and actually yeah, I don't know if any one of these things are like are okay to be read on stream. Let me check.
I had.
Okay.
Okay.
But I have something from you, which I will do.
I hate this.
I'm okay. I spent the afternoon doing clothes shopping for kid, and everything is expensive. Now my body and my wallet are sad. Understand. I definitely understand. It's all pricey. I totally get it. Clothes are... It is wild. When I was a kid and I used to go shopping, I remember how expensive like t-shirts used to be, and how like a regular t-shirt was like still out of our price range, but it was still doable. And now it's like, how is the what? The price tag just does not make sense to me. But yeah. Okay. So yeah, let me see here. We're gonna do some TikTok stuff first, because I've got some cool, interesting videos to show you. But first, and then after that, I think I'm gonna do Alpherg's update, and then hopefully he can come up with a name for it, because otherwise I am just gonna call it its acronym again, which is just great. And totally befitting and very informative to everyone who watches the VOD, seeing, what is MJ reading today? Cool. Awesome story. Very cool. That tells me everything I need to know about what we're reading. So, we'll see if he steps up and actually makes a cool name. Or just any name.
It may not tell you about the story, but it sure does tell you about the author.
Like, I basically only got things for Skittle and spent nearly $300. Oh my god. Yeah, I get it. Oh, for kids' clothing as well. Like, that's wild. Oh, goodness.
Oh, okay.
Is Skittle happy with the purchases, though? That's the question. Yeah, it's gonna be TikTok, then Alpherg, and then let me tag Rain. And then if they don't respond, or if there's something else, if anyone else has anything that they want me to read and give feedback on, I'd be more than happy to. And then, you know what I think I might do? If I have nothing, I literally might just, I might just pull from... Oh, no. I might just pull from the woodwork one of the things that I wrote a long time ago. As part of my book world, as one of the first intended passages, or just something that I wanted to write about. And yeah. And we could read that. I haven't looked at it in about maybe 2 years, maybe a year longer. And I was still planning to revise it, and it's incomplete, but I could read it anyway. And you guys could give feedback instead. That'd be pretty cool. Be a little bit different from what we usually do.
Oh, man.
And since I spend a lot of time giving people feedback on their stuff, it's only fair if you get a chance to do it to me. Okay. Alright, so here's what we're gonna do first. There's some interesting... Yeah, no, let's do only... I think I'm going to show you something really interesting about incels. We're going to learn about incels today. First time I've given her full choice over everything, because previous to the pandemic she was like grade 1 and wasn't picky. Okay. She's quite happy. Excellent. She got to pick the choices, the clothes that she specifically wanted to wear. That's awesome.
I just want to say, I could have sworn that was going to go anywhere else.
What?
My mind refused. like the whole way through you saying
Sexless
incel, my
young
brain was like, that's
men.
not the word
Tip.
he's saying. There's no way.
Wait, incel? Did you think I was going everywhere
Yeah.
else until I said incel? Yeah. Did it
Yeah.
happen in slow motion? Like,
Yes.
Oh, he actually said it. Yeah, we're talking about incels today. Just a short video. Plus, we typically did hand-me-downs, so there's not lots of choice in that. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I know that feel. We also used to do hand-me-downs when I was a kid. Oh, okay. Right, let's look at some, this also might be a short stream because I'm just not, I'm not fully awake, and I don't really, I don't feel like my condition is great today, if I'm being quite honest. Okay, let's share for Alpherg. Right. Right. We are going to talk about incels today. And I think it's important to understand this sort of thing. So firstly, if you don't know what an incel is, stands for involuntarily celibate. Although I find the word involuntary to be a little bit of a stretch, considering it's still a choice. But also the fact that you think that no one wants to have sex with you is just a whole big way to place blame on people around you rather than looking inwardly and working on yourself. Incels are, in my mind, most of the time people who just lack their own self-growth and choose to take that out on other people, specifically women, mostly, like most of the time. And the circles of online incel discourse are full of the most disgusting levels of hate and toxicity that you've ever seen. I really don't recommend you go and look it up. Just take my word for it that it's just gross. But that doesn't mean that these people deserve a life without dignity. And if we want to make a world where everyone feels welcome and where incels don't actually want to be incels anymore, they want to work on themselves, we have to understand them, and we have to understand something interesting about the history of them. And if you want to understand the history of the incel kind of cultural phenomenon, understand that it's not as new as you might think. We have always had incel groups in human society, especially in Western European societies. The incel groups, the sort of, as this guy says, the sort of sexless young men kind of group, you can see here in many different ways. And I think this guy here, William Costello, he's a he's a researcher that specializes in studying the sort of incel cultural phenomenon. And understanding this, I think, is an interesting way to understand them and to get where we may have failed to create these sorts of people. So here we go. This is the truth about incels. It's very interesting.
Sexless young men, typically throughout history, throughout time, have been the group to worry about. So strongly associated with violence that we call it the young male syndrome in our field, that this has always been a huge problem. Now, throughout history, you had kind of cultural or social institutions to deal with your population of incels. So, for example, the monastery would be one for sure, give a high status position to kind of channel these extra guys into. You'd create Vikings out of them. The Vikings were likely incels, not the sexy kind of Netflix Vikings that you think from the TV shows. The Portuguese explorers, there's strong evidence that they were incels, basically.
Can you imagine, before we get to talking about the Portuguese explorers, which has its own other connotation, but can you imagine the fact that everyone thinks that Vikings are these like incredibly sexy Nordic, super masculine, muscular warriors of old, whereas in actual fact it's just a boat sailing through the ocean full of people moaning about how how women don't owe them anything. Like that's a crazy image for me. It's so funny. But yeah, very cool. So the basic theme of this is that in societies of old, there were places to deal with people like this, to send them, to give them different like ideas of purpose so that they wouldn't focus so much on the sexless aspect of their lives. And then we get to these things like Portuguese explorers.
The Portuguese explorers, there's strong evidence that they were incels, basically, sent on purpose missions to kind of basically get away from causing trouble for everyone else.
I mean, can you define them as incels when sexual violence was a part of that conquest?
Right, so that's also a good point, that the motivation of acquiring mates has been a motivating factor for a lot of men to join terrorist groups. Even jihadi violence, it's the promise of brides in this life or the next. And when you talk to anthropologists who, there's one, Napoleon Chagnon, and he did some research with the Yanomamo, who are an extremely violent hunter-gatherer society in Bolivia. And he told them about why people in the West go to war to spread democracy, free speech, things like this. And they were just falling off their chair laughing. They were like, what? Why would you? And he said, well, why do you go to war? And they were like, only one reason, to get mates. Sex.
Wild. Wild stuff. Very, very interesting. So yeah, find you an incel group and send them off to war against other incel groups. That's the solution. Of course, we can't do colonialism anymore.
About, right?
What's that?
That's what Elden Ring is about, right?
Elden Ring? Yes, you are maidenless. It's a story of the true incel going out in search of greater purpose than maidens. Yes, exactly. So yeah, interesting view from an anthropologist about the history of incels and what we used to do to them. And now, because a lot of the old institutions that they had, like being a raider or being a colonizer, are not really kind of accepted in many parts of the world, except for Israel, of course, is now no longer that valid. Therefore, we got to find other ways. And unfortunately, letting these people sit in their self-worth issues in circles on the internet where it's just filled with other people with those same self-worth issues, they don't actually do any work on themselves with regard to interaction with the outside world, and it just gets more and more toxic. So if you really want to help, I think if we really want to help deal with this, it would be interesting to understand, first of all, why this happens, like we've just listened to this guy speak about it, and also how we can help by providing more modern institutions that don't involve violence and can help people kind of just come to terms with themselves and have more self-worth, because a lot of this comes from self-worth issues, for sure. And it's self-worth issues that are validated by other men with self-worth issues usually. And it's a real terrible cauldron of problems. So, there's your education for the day about incels. Very cool. Thank you for listening. And then we can do some reading. I knew an incel for a small time of my life. I talked to him for like quite a good few months. There was a game that I was planning to play called Chronicles of Illyria. I don't know if you guys know anything about that game, but it was going to be a medieval style like MMO building game, but it's not MMO. It's MMO, but not with the MMO formula. Like you get to be this person in this sort of Mountain Blade kind of universe, and you can basically do whatever you want. You can explore, you can farm. It's like Skyrim, I guess, but more medieval building, like kingdoms and stuff. And you got to have your own organizations and stuff. And I was planning to have this underground, like, criminal organization. It was very exciting. We had our own characters planned and everything. And then the project fell through. It was crowdfunded. And then the devs, like, dropped the ball in such a profoundly hilarious way, and now it's just one guy. It's just the lead dev who is he's been desperately trying to salvage this for like the last 2-3 years, And it's been wild to check in every now and then just to see he's still plodding along. And every announcement message he posts with an update, it's always more thumbs downs than thumbs ups. And it's just, yeah. It's very, it's quite a sad story because I was very excited for the game. And a lot of people put a lot of money into that. But yeah, them's the breaks. And as part of that, you will find inevitably that there are some people who believe that they want to make... They don't believe that their life is as rewarding for them as they'd like, and so a game like this allows them to channel that energy into a different place. And with medieval style, like, medieval style games, it tends to attract a certain type of person as well, more than others, and so with that, there were many of these sorts of people, and I interacted with one of them, and it was, I wouldn't say traumatic, but it got uncomfortable many, many times, and I definitely let it go on longer than it should have, but it was still an interesting series of interactions nonetheless. Some of the most problematic views that I think I've ever heard from people, and but in the way that makes them believe that they have unlocked the final thought, like they are at the end of their thought process and this is the conclusion of now they understand everything about life. Like that's how they used to talk to me, as if they were finished thinking, like they had done all their thinking and now they've lived a good life. By the way, they were like 20 when I spoke to them as well, and it was just this super cliche, stereotypical kind of person. I'm sure people who have spoken to someone like this can imagine exactly who I'm talking about. Yeah, they feel like they're enlightened 100%. They legit think that they've just unlocked all the secrets of the universe and that they don't have to do any more thinking about anything. And it's just, it's cringe. It literally just comes across as cringe. So yeah. Like it comes across as I'm living out my anime fantasy. That's what it feels like to me. I don't mean any offense to people who love anime. I know that Alpherg is in here as well. So
What?
But yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Were you comparing me to the ilk of my kind?
No, I'm not saying that everyone who watches anime is like that. I'm just saying, like, I know that the bad side of that particular fandom is very similar to the kind of thing that I'm talking about right now.
I may have misused the word ilk there.
Well, ilk of my kind is kind of tautological, yeah. So maybe like my ilk would be, yeah. But it's okay.
I meant to say the toxic people of my kind.
Ah, yeah. They've
Unlike
ascended
them,
to
I
a new
actually
level,
fucked.
yeah. Sorry, say that again?
So unlike them, I actually fuck.
Definitely. Okay, very cool. So, yeah, they've definitely they've ascended to a new level. Yeah, it was exhausting. I had to literally just stop at some point because there was so much yeah, no laundry being done at all. That's true as well. There's just so much like there's an insane superiority complex that is just exhausting to talk to, because it feels like you're talking to someone who's just another person, but they believe that it comes through in their words that they feel like they're so much better than you, and you can just see it. It's so obvious that it's this wild, like, false confidence facade, but it's so impenetrable. Yeah, it's wild. Anyway. They should all be monks. We should put them all in the monastery. Just let them be monks. They probably just wash a lot of socks. Correct. That's probably true as well. That's something I could never... I'm not going to entertain that longer than necessary, but I could never... Ugh. That just does not sound good to me. Ugh. Anyway, reading time. Right. Is there an update to the document that you had, Alpherg.
There has been. The link should automatically update.
Okay, cool. Where can you... Where did we leave? Like, have you revised the whole thing? Like, where can you?
It's the whole thing, pretty much, just until after where we left off at.
Okay, so so everything has been revised, and then there's more.
Just a tiny bit. I actually finished the conversation.
Cool. Okay, you know what? I think we might just start this. We might just start this at the beginning then, if that's gonna be the vibe. Let me see. Nyong. 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 Okay. Oh, wait a minute. We're on reading. Why would I do this here? There we go. Ah, it auto fits. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Right, I think we're gonna read this from just from the top, since there have been a couple of changes, and we'll see if we can. I don't remember what I said in the previous area. Sorry, the previous episode that I read from here. I remember the kind of things that happened, but let's see if there's let's see if I have an easier time of visualizing things. So here we go. This is title. What if I get and that's informative. Thanks, Alpherg. Appreciate that. We will continue this now. Here we go. I hate it. Breathe. The word rings through Holt's head as he stares himself in the bathroom mirror. He swiftly raises a hand to slick back his crimson feather-like hair, holding it in place. Okay, we've seen this already. These are like animal-ish kind of people. There are some animal hybrids, so so that's some important background to the world that we're in. I'm remembering that as well. Also, we've now moved specifically into present tense, which is interesting. So that's something I've picked up on that's slightly different. Jesus Christ. Here we go.
It is very hard to consistently write in present tense.
Oh, 100%. It's easy, especially based on the novels that you've read in the past. It's easy to it's easy to default to past tense, but yeah, let's see. All right, we're going to start again. Breathe. The word rings through Holt's head as he stares at himself in the bathroom mirror. He swiftly raises a hand to slick back his crimson feather-like hair, holding it in place. His green eyes flicker with a fuchsia color as his breath fogs the mirror, obscuring his smooth, pale face. A sternness covers his panic. Breathe. He doesn't register Emilia calling for him. He drops his hand back to the sink, his hair falling slightly back into place. Calmer. Breathe. Emilia calls a bit louder this time, clearly frustrated. Halt! You better not be on your phone in there, I swear to the gods. We can't ever start on time. Holt cracks a small smile, finally feeling like himself again. His smooth voice retorts in a playful tone. Oh, come on, you wouldn't have me any other way. Remembering it was his turn for announcements, he pulls out his watch. 9:10 a.m., 10 minutes late. Holt finally leaves the bathroom and quickly struts across the office. Emilia patiently waits at the door to the main room of the Alpherg Guild Hall. He takes a sip of hot cocoa and grabs a folder as he passes by his desk. He winces a bit, the cocoa still a little too hot. Emilia gives him a slight smirk as he glances at her. This is all different, by the way. I don't remember reading about this. Like the dialogue is the actions are the same, but the dialogue has been changed. It's very cool. I find there's a lot more meat on this. It's
What I was going for.
Yeah, it feels more developed. I like this. Thanks, cutie. He doesn't skip a chance to flirt with the woman who poured his cup for him, just to use her magic to overheat it. Oh, God. She would scrunch up her face, trying her best not to blush. Oh, God. Fortunately, she managed until he turned away to walk through the door. She gave a small smile when he couldn't see. Oh, is he catcalling people in the office? God, Holt. Ugh. All right. His long red coat gets the attention of everyone as he steps through the door. Amelia's attention was more due to how the form-fitting coat accentuates his small, toned body. He bounces to his own song across the stage, causing the oppressive sound of rookie onboarding day to come to a screeching halt. Emilia steps through next, with her cold gaze sweeping across the room, double-checking that it seems like everyone is doing what they're supposed to be. This feels, I'm going to say again, it feels so much more developed. I'm immediately sensing from the time that I last read this that, like I said, the actions are the same, but it feels like I can fully imagine what's going on. I can see him, I can see the character, I can see her. Their attitudes are so much more expanded on. He feels so much more...
My work is like an ogre.
Yeah. It feels like you're uncovering the layers. Absolutely. It's wonderful. I really like this. The bounciness in his step is giving him much more of a youthful quality and more of a kind of carefree vibe, and I think that it matches everything else that he's done up to this point as well. Yeah, this is cool. This is cool. I like this. Holt smiles as he steps to the railing, leaning both elbows on it, and takes his cue to start today's announcements. He speaks playfully. All right, George, I've got a new case for you. Greg, congrats on the promotion. Doesn't mean you get an extra donut, though. And whoever James Darros is, if you're here, my office ASAP, please. He pauses and moves to take a step back, allowing the tension to swell a bit. All right, everyone, have a safe day and do good work. And rookies, glad to have you. James, a young man that's quite literally built like a grizzly bear and covered in scars, stands from a bench at the front of the main room. His casual outfit of jeans and long-sleeve shirt with jacket caught no one's eyes. As James starts his walk towards the office, Holt reaches over the railing to pass the case folder to George. Holt then turns and walks away as noise slowly trickles back into the room with every step he takes. That's a cool image in my head. Amelia turns as he passes her, giving her long dark teal dress and crimson cloak a slight swirl. The noise finally erupts when Amelia shuts the door. It's giving mage cops?
Yes.
Like wizard police? Yeah. Like they're all
Yes.
wearing dresses and cloaks, but they're talking about rookies and stuff. Like, this is cool. I like that.
So I just want to point out,
Yeah.
when you refer to Holt as having catcalled her, that is false. It is a reciprocated back and forth thing that they have going on.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're gonna talk about that for a second, sometimes people, I appreciate that this is described, that it does feel like a reciprocal thing. Yeah, especially when he couldn't see there's a small smile, but I think there's something to be said about the fact that if a lot of inappropriate office behavior is derived from a difference in power relationship between, if he's a superior, then the one below would feel obligated to respond favorably, especially if there's a difference in power in the workplace. So consider that when you write about this stuff. I think one of the ways... Yeah?
If anything, she's actually above him in the power structure.
Really?
But like on paper, they're equals.
Wait, the one who poured his cup?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a way to... do you plan on describing this before now, or is this the first time it's going to come up?
I thought I had a part where it mentions that they're the same rank, basically.
What, here, like in the story? Because this is only like
so far, yeah. Of what I've
okay.
written so far, I feel like I've mentioned it. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Because here, up until we've seen this is the first time that we've used not Emilia, just the woman who poured his cup for him is not Emilia, right?
No,
it's a different person.
That is Amelia.
Oh, it is Amelia. Oh, I thought it was a different person. Oh, okay, cool. All right. Interesting. I wonder, yeah, okay. I think... Yeah. I think here, yeah, it might. I don't know what it is for me, but when I saw here the woman, the woman who poured his cup, I don't see Emilia as being the one who did that. Just between these, I think maybe between, like, there might be something here that might indicate that she is the same person. If she, because when you say here, she patiently waits at the door to the main room. He takes a sip of hot cocoa. So he takes a sip of hot cocoa. There's no implication that Emilia was the one who did it. And then when he says he tries to flirt with the woman who poured his cup for him, is like it to me at least, it read like it was a different person.
So
yeah,
I
Taters
completely
also thought
understand
that
where
it
you're
was a
coming
different
from.
person.
I totally see it.
Mm.
My thought process was mentioning it's too hot, and then Amelia smirking at him as he looks over at her.
If I was watching him, whether I poured coffee or not, if I was looking for a chance to tease him, if I saw my like coworker wincing at hot cocoa or hot coffee, I would also probably smirk as well, whether I'd poured it or not.
That's fair.
So I think
about it that way.
it's such a tiny thing, but if you're wanting him to, if you wanted to be sure that it's Amelia, I think it might, that it might be served better if you mention that he takes a sip.
If they just like be less coy with it.
I think. Well, think about this, right? As an example, off the top of my head, you could change this sentence. Instead of he takes a sip of hot cocoa and grabs a folder, you can say, he takes a sip from, the hot cocoa given to him by Amelia, or something like, some kind of a slightly more obvious indication that she is the one who gave it to him. So then when you use the word the woman here, because I like the idea that you don't always use her name, and you in fact say the woman who poured his cup for him, like that's a cool way of describing that. But if you make it a little more obvious up here, it'll make this hit a little bit better, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
Okay, cool. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Like I said, that's a tiny thing, but
That's
yeah,
where I like to get lost.
it would. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I mean, same. It would also highlight the fact that they are kind of the same, because when we talk about Holt and Amelia, they immediately from the beginning they seem to be talking to each other like they are equals, which is good. So that would make their kind of flirtatious relationship a little bit more understandable if they have equal amounts of power in the workplace. Which, when you describe Emilia more obviously, it does seem like they do, which is good. So that's well described. If that tiny little clue is given there, then it develops their relationship in a nice way. Okay. All right, here we go. We'll move back to... let's read this James paragraph again, and then we can keep going. James, a young man that's quite literally built like a grizzly bear and covered in scars, stands from a bench at the front of the main room. His casual outfit of jeans and long-sleeve shirt with jacket caught no one's eyes. As James starts his walk towards the office, Holt reaches over the railing to pass the case folder to George. Holt then turns and walks away as noise slowly trickles back into the room with every step he takes. Emilia turns as he passes her, giving her long dark teal dress and crimson cloak a slight swirl. The noise finally erupts when Emilia shuts the door. Holt was already leaning back in his chair, feet on the desk, and a knife made of red ice being tossed into the air. Ooh, that's cool. Red ice. Nice. I'm just saying that Gavin doesn't really need a partner, not one like this, at least. He looks up to see the Ursine across the threshold, almost tall enough to duck through, definitely wide enough he has to turn slightly. James became nervous. It was clear they were talking about him. He'd hoped they wouldn't learn of his childhood. Holt spoke in a joking manner, hoping to relieve a little of the anxiety James was obviously feeling. You must be my 10:30, 15 minutes early by my count. Have a seat, James. He removes his feet from the desk and points at the chair across from him with the knife, as it slowly disappears from his hand. Cool. Little show of magic, maybe a little display of power. Nice. James spoke with a baritone voice. Yes, sir. James goes to glance at Emilia, hearing her type away at reports, but is stopped by a peculiar sight. Against the back wall was a table, just big enough to fit the chessboard that sits on it. The pieces are made from red and black ice. The most peculiar part was that the red set is missing the left rook and knight. He shrugs as he moves the chair to sit, thinking Holt must have lost the pieces. What exactly was I called here for, sir? I thought... Holt cut him off. Holt's speech starts slow, but quickly speeds up. No need to call me sir. I don't really do formalities. Would you like some hot cocoa? My own recipe. Holt didn't wait for an answer, sliding a drawer open and pulling out a thermos in the middle of asking, pouring a cup of cocoa and setting it in front of James. Holt continues while slightly bouncing in his chair. We just have some extra questions, if that's okay with you. Yes. Yeah, that's fine with me. James's eyes shifted nervously between the cup of cocoa and Holt, caught off guard by the forceful offer. Oh, we've switched to past tense. He slowly grabbed the cup and took a sip, finding it smooth, creamy, and the perfect temperature. I caught you. James tuned out the clacking of Amelia's keyboard. Holt takes a sip from his own hot cocoa. Oh, and then we switched again. From his own hot cocoa before speaking. Well, what made you choose Ashafreya? Why not Vesterum or Magnimus? I feel like you would do much better at either of those guilds than here. James couldn't keep eye contact with Holt as he thought about his answer. His eyes landed on a corner behind Holt that was oddly dark. Well, I've had a few run-ins with guys from Vesterum. I found them to be a little too brutish for my tastes. Had a case of mistaken identity once. I tried to tell them the truth, but next thing I know, an Ashafreyan officer is pulling us apart. He paused, thinking it better to leave that story there. James didn't realize that the smile on Holt's face was because he knew the story already, having been the one to break up that fight. That's cool. I like that little... the way that was written is very nice. I didn't want to join Magnimus because... He trailed off, thinking back to his childhood. Holt brought him back with a loud sip of his cocoa. Because monster hunting just doesn't seem like something for me. I enjoy this. This is a nice attempt to use... It's not visual storytelling, but it's more than just exposition dumping. It's really nice. Like, through dialogue and stuff, you're learning more about the world and what the different guilds are like. I like this. This is very cool. Holt gave a more cheerful smile. Back to past tense. As he set his cup down with a clack. Wonderful. Don't worry, we feel the same about the guys at Vesterum. You should meet the leader one day. Though, keep an eye on your phone, if you do. Better yet, just don't take it around her. Emilia cut in coldly. Don't listen to him. She just doesn't like Holton. So whenever he annoys her, zap, zap, phone. She giggles silently. Also past tense over here. Remembering the last time it happened. Holt was in the middle of playing a game and hadn't saved for almost an hour. He spent the next week being zapped by any metal object he touched. That's cool. Holt would squint at Emilia. Anyway, your reports from graduation show a certain potential. One that I'm not sure would fit well with our normal work. James' leg begins bouncing, worried he wasn't going to be allowed to start at the guild. See, I see him as a bear, so if he's a bear and his leg starts bouncing, I imagine the whole room just goes... As he's trying to be subtle about it, but it's shaking the whole room. It's great. But it's good for something else I have in mind. I've got an opening on my personal team, and I think you'd fit right in. So what do you say? You saying we some kind of suicide squad? This offer caught James off guard, almost causing him to physically recoil in confusion. Yeah. That sounds amazing. James got so excited by this offer that he forgot about his worries. More past tense. He's looked up to Holt and his personal team of officers, the Rangers, for the past few years. James dreamt of joining them, but had never thought it'd be possible. He then remembers why. That terrible event from his childhood. He pushed his worries aside. Holt said it looks like he has great potential. My little sister is going to be so proud. Okay, this, you've mentioned a few times, it's a little too obvious. I think if we're going to, if you want to bring up his childhood, I think this is now the third time I've read it. So it's almost like, if I'm a reader, it's like the author is going, look here, look here, look here. But it feels a little too like, look at the childhood, instead of letting the reader get there with like clues and hints rather than have it just be spoken outright. I think by the time you get here, instead of describing it as his childhood, what's in there? Like, what kind of memory is he actually, like, because when people remember bad stuff from their childhood, they don't remember, yes, this is my childhood. They remember the thing itself. So maybe if you want a little clue as to something that might have happened during his childhood, describe a scene from it that he's specifically thinking about, like a smell or a sound or a sight. Just a brief moment there that tips the reader off as to, he's having like a little flashback. It might be a little bit more effective than mentioning again that he's thinking about his childhood. Just a suggestion, you don't have to take it. Wonderful. I'll get the paperwork started. Take this. It tells you where and when to be for your first day. I can answer any and all questions at that time. Holt would open a drawer, pull out a slip of paper, and slide it across the desk to James. It was a piece of simple copy paper with the words, Jim's Bar, 2 o'clock, and a contact number printed on it in Comic Sans. Oh my god. What? Why Comic Sans? Holt gave a smile that shows how serious he was about it. Incredible. We're jumping between tenses again. There's, he slides something and then gave a smile that showed how serious he was. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that. I think you know. Okay. James grabbed the paper and stood. He went to walk away, but Holt reminded him about his hot cocoa, making sure that he'd take it home. As James closed the door to the office, a new person stepped into the room, though this person had not come in through the door. They stepped in through the shadow in the corner behind Holt. I knew there was someone in there. Very cool. That's some cool, that is very sneaky hint dropping. That James was looking at the corner, and in my brain I was like, I should remember that, and then it paid off. That's really cool. I like that a lot.
That was the plan.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, Baron's here. Hello, Baron. Or maybe skip it entirely, like maybe just something like then he remembers why he takes a breath to push his worries aside. Yeah, that works well as well. Rather than like describe the memory itself, you could just avoid it entirely, like James might be trying to avoid it. You could like hint at the fact that he's remembering something and then pull away from it. Yeah. The thin figure is dressed in the form-fitting coal-colored robes worn by the monks of the Shadow Monastery, their face hidden behind a white and black mask. Ooh. They quietly step to Holt, who has not seen them enter. Emilia, on the other hand, has seen this visitor and knows exactly what they are up to. Holt turns his chair, smiling, and upon seeing the figure, jumps, making the figure chuckle. God, Loki! You nearly got an ice blast to the gut. Holt takes a few breaths before standing from his chair. As he walks around his desk, he gives a slow twist of his arm and wrist as if pulling something from the air. He may as well be, as a rook made from red ice is formed upside down in his fingers. The missing chess piece. He gives it a quick look over before setting it in its place on the chessboard. This is cool. It's kind of letting me, it's giving me clues as to what Holt may be using the chessboard for. Very interesting. Loki watches Holt set the chess piece down. The monk's voice is gently authoritative. So he accepted. Have you told the others about his past? Have you even thought about how that may affect him? Holt cut him off. Of course I have. You know that. Holt blasts back unseriously. See, this, have you told the others about his past, is undercut by the fact that it's been described 3 times. So that was what I was trying to get at. Because if someone else talks about it, it's a little more effective. If you go with him, if he's trying to forget something, then he wouldn't outright mention it. If he hadn't gotten over it by now, James, in this instance, then he wouldn't be outright mentioning it in his thought process. He would be avoiding it. But this guy obviously doesn't care and needs and wants it to be known that it's important. So this might be the first time that we actually learn about it, like directly. I think that would be very effective. Emilia slipped her way in now. Really? How many half-cocked plans of yours have Loki and I had to save your ass from? Holt was known across the continent as a goof, never thinking. Yet oddly, it almost always worked out. He always happened to have the right pieces in the right places at the right time. Chess pieces? Loki speaks softly, more calm than before. All right, Holt. I trust you. Let's move on. Under construction. They're going to a construction site. Cool. All right, sick. That's it. This is so cool. I love reading the first part that we saw, and now to read this more improved draft is really awesome. To see the way that you've changed things and the way that you develop things. The characters feel way more alive than they did before. The actions that they do speak a lot more to their character. The other characters have moments that describe them as being different from the main character. I like the change in dialogue as well. You've clearly done work on that. There seems to be... it was very easy for me as someone to read it to distinguish voices. It was great. I really, really like that. There's been a lot of development in the fields that we talked about when we first read this. So yeah, great job on that. I have some thoughts about other things, but I'll get there in a second. The writer definitely loves hot cocoa. Agreed. Do you like hot cocoa, Alpherg? Is that something that you're that you're sort of self-inserting here?
Sort of. Holt is a whole ass self-insert. Yeah.
Did you say Holt is a bit of a self-insert?
He's a whole ass self-insert.
Wow, very cool. Be careful of that. Sometimes writers tend to favor their self-inserts over others, especially if he's the main character.
Oh, I make sure to completely check that bias.
Yeah, cool. Very nice. Okay, let's talk about it. Are you also a bird man? Yeah, at this point, I feel like this is when we find out that Alpherg is actually a bird man. Yes, the animal qualities... Feather... Yeah, the animal qualities are much clearer here. The way that you've described characters physically is also clearer. It's great. Solid improvement. I love this. This was a great job. Anyway, continue.
The feathers are actually in reference to reptilian feathers.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Do you know who I see him? I see Holt as more like a varactyl. Like a reptile with feathers as well. The varactyl is the animal that Obi-Wan Kenobi rides in Episode 3 of Star Wars. That's what that's the kind of vibe that I get. Except you did say mouth, so I'm assuming he doesn't have a beak. He has
no,
just like a regular mouth.
He has
the space octopus. The space teeth. Octopus herald is a lizard bird. Yeah. Yeah, go on, Alpherg.
Huh? I'm probably just thinking out loud, sorry.
Okay, cool. So, a couple of things that I've noticed here. We've spoken about the childhood thing and how if you want something to be maybe given a sinister undertone, mentioning it less is more. So mentioning it many times fewer, especially not from the main character. The character who's feeling that that memory avoidance is something that it would give it away too soon, and it's a little bit more obvious. We try and keep things like less on the nose. But when someone else mentions it, it has more weight if they're trying to avoid it. It really puts that message across, and it hits with more oomph if we haven't really acknowledged it before. So if James is remembering scenes or trying to push something down, then make it so that he's doing that, rather than you telling us that he is doing that. To kind of describe it, there's a difference there between descriptions. I forgot Emilia's tail. Yes, I was about to suggest. I was about to confirm. I don't actually know what Emilia looks like specifically. I've noticed that when it comes to character descriptions, you've also focused, and I don't know if this is purposeful or not, but if it is, it's really cool. I like this strategy. You've focused a lot on color when it comes to describing characters. There's a lot of color in the world, which I really like. Mainly to do with the color of feathers or the color of the outfit they're wearing or whatever. but it's quite cool. I don't know what their facial features look like. And
same.
Yeah, so that might be something to work on for the next one.
That is faces and voices are the two hardest things for me.
Okay, well, let's think about it. So for voices, I think what you can do with voices is draw simile. So you don't have to. The baritone voice was good enough, like, because that seems like fairly low, but it really only describes pitch. I want you, if there are many great ways to describe voices. One of the most effective is finding a sound effect in real life to be as accurate as possible. So for example, if someone has a very like a voice like Loki, you could probably describe it as a crisp, perhaps a night breeze through a cornfield, if you wanted to be super self-indulgent or very specific. That gives us the impression that it's smooth, that it's low, that it's measured because it's nighttime, and that it perhaps has authority because it's kind of it's a breeze. It's like a force of nature. That one simile alone will tell us quite a lot about the kind of voice that he has, and then you don't have to think about it again, because once the reader's read that once, that's in their brain. It's the same with Holt. Holt has a very happy-go-lucky kind of voice, right? He seems unserious, but he has a serious kind of streak to him as well. And you could apply the same tactic there. If you want him to have a voice like that, you could say, oh man, maybe you could say, rather than his voice kind of bouncing, you could say his lilting voice, because lilting provides a light bouncing kind of quality. And you could use the word bounce. You could say his lilting voice bounces across the table to James like a frog skipping across a lily pad. That use of simile can really give us a lot about the tone color of his voice and how he does inflections and things like that. So look for options. Yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful advice. Lilting is a little too far out of my lexicon, unfortunately.
That's totally fair. You got to use the words that you have access to, which is totally fine. But yeah, there's some similes for that. You could say floaty or bouncy, like you said. You could also not say the word like. You could literally say his voice bounces across the table to find James's ear, and that immediately tells us that it's like that's the kind of inflection that he's using. So you can use these sort of tools. They are at your disposal. Then when it comes to describing facial features, describe facial features like you would describe furniture or inanimate objects, like sharp facial features or angular facial features or round facial features. Or you don't have to be incredibly specific with every character you have. Just kind of give us something as to the sort of feeling that it invokes in us, because sharp facial features implies a sharp kind of character as well. So yeah, so for Holt, for example, you could say sharp facial features undercut by a sort of unserious smirk on his face. So that kind of gives us a more roguish archetype of his face. It's very short, it's to the point, and it lets the reader fill in the gaps in their imagination while still giving your baseline as to what you think he should be described as looking like. Yeah, so those are some of the things that you can use to describe faces and voices a little bit better. And it will be immediately felt, I'm telling you now. Again, hold on. Okay, again, when it comes to, we've talked about this already, but the past and present switching is definitely something that can catch you out. As a writer, it's much easier to be oblivious to that than for the reader to be oblivious to it, because as soon as the reader changes tense in their brain, something switches, and if that switches in the middle of a scene, it's kind of like it feels a little bit weird for the reader. So really take care for that, and make sure you read a couple times before moving on to the next scene, just for there. Then I noticed a couple of times that you say the word are you an MMO RPG role player? Do you have history in those games?
Not MMO, no.
Interesting, because you have a roleplay, you have an MMORPG roleplay trope in your writing that I noticed immediately, because I have that experience. And that is the use of the word...
That...
Yeah?
That might come from my Discord roleplay days.
It could be. It's the same style.
Especially since the lore for this story comes from one of said roleplay sources.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to tell you about it and why it should be done away with, and that is the use of the word would. So, if you have a background in collaborative roleplay, like role-playing with other people in either Discord servers or MMORPGs like I do or like Alpherg does, you will have seen this word would a lot. When you emote at your character doing something, it's not assumed that it happens. A success is dependent on the reactions of other people in the scene, because it's collaborative. So, by implying that something is not assumed, and that it's an attempt to do something that other people can respond to and undercut and interrupt if they so wish, you use the word would to imply that. So you would say, for example, for halt, you could say halt would... Hold on. I'm gonna get there. Wait. There we go. Halt would squint at Amelia. So, this is a textbook MMO emote line. And then he would pass a slip of paper over as well. Yeah. It's implying that Halt, or the writer of Halt, is waiting for another player to jump in with their own character's actions before moving on with the scene. But you're writing a book. So the big difference here is that you're waiting on yourself, and that has the potential to take the reader out of it. You're the only one writing here, so you don't have to use would. In fact, I would recommend against it, because would implies like the character is kind of waiting for Emilia's response, and if Emilia's response doesn't come, which it doesn't here, then it's like an incomplete action, basically. So when you say this in a book, it's Halt would squint at Emilia, it means that he doesn't squint at Emilia, but he's thinking about it. That's what it implies. So yeah, that's it's very subtle, and it's a tiny thing. But I would say it's still important. So get rid of all of the woulds and attempts to emote things, especially when you're writing a book, because it implies that you're waiting on other writers, and that you're writing something that is developing as you write it, which is not true when it comes to a solo project. It exists as its own once developed thing. You're not doing it real time. So that's another thing there. Yeah, I don't think there was anything else that jumped out at me.
That's the only time that I did that.
There were two. I think there were 2 or 3 times that it happened. So, like, Halt would squint there, and then...
on the next paragraph.
Well, this Christian got so excited, he forgot about his worry. He has looked up to Halt, his personal team, yeah, he would pull open a drawer. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
This one is implying that he would slide the paper across to James, and then you're expecting James's player to be like, James takes the paper, and then it's a complete emote. But because you're the only one writing here, yeah, you know what I mean, right? You're doing it on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I understood it.
No, for sure. It's a very subtle change, but it's really, I actually find it really interesting to tell, because that particular word or implication comes specifically from collaborative role-playing servers and channels and stuff. So that's really interesting. And it does give clues as to where the story comes from, which I think is also very interesting. Okay. Other things that I loved were little clues that were in the beginning of the passage that paid off at the end, like the chess pieces, the shadow hiding in the corner. Love that there's payoff at the end of this. It felt really good to be reading it and to have that investment, and then to have that payoff at the end and be like, I was right to notice something as well as the other character did. I like I think what you've done the most well here is build a greater atmosphere of what's going on here. It really feels like just another day at the office. It feels like the chattering of the people outside of Halt's office is a really nice way to build on that. I like the way that the characters interact with each other. I thought that was a highlight as well. And yeah, like Tater said, the chess pieces are a great touch. I think it hints at something better that's going on in Halt's brain as well. that he's kind of like like I said, he's a very unserious detective, but he has something going on in his head that's like a greater plan, and he puts chess pieces into place when other characters appear, and that's like, the timing of that is very suspicious for a reader, so that's something that they'll remember for later. It's just really cool. I like this a lot. I also like the subtle world building that's going on here, talking about the 3 different guilds that James talks about and how he doesn't join them, and how the Asher Freya seems to be kind of the moderate between the 2 types of guilds, between monster hunters and the more like brutish types. So Asher Freya seems to be the more finesse-based magic guild. But then there's also a monastery that Loki comes out of, which is cool. Like a shadow monastery, that's cool. That implies the existence of other monasteries, which I also enjoy. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Oh,
I really like the...
You're gonna do that to me.
Why? What's happening?
I didn't have any more planned.
The shadow monastery does imply the existence of other types of monasteries in my head, but that's only because I like because the term monastery is just kind of very general, and in a world that's big, you might have more than one type. Even if you don't go on and explain them, though, you don't have to. You don't have to explain all the lore of your world. You can let readers fill in the gaps. In fact, I would encourage that you do that. A book does not have to explain everything. And unfortunately, we have...
it won't. It can't.
Yeah, exactly. The world is too big. When it comes to a lot of media, especially TV shows and movies these days, people expect everything to be explained to them rather than let things just be, and let things just be a mystery. Even if they are maybe important plot points that people might not see obviously, having that kind of that air of mystery to it keeps things exciting, and unfortunately people have interpreted that as bad writing when it's actually not necessarily. So yeah, you don't have to explain everything. And in fact, readers do not have to, readers do not want, really, readers don't want everything explained. They think they do, but they don't. If you get everything explained to you, you have a Tolkien novel. And that's notoriously difficult to sit through. So yeah. Yeah, see, Tater, I love when a book doesn't explain everything.
So
what's that?
At my high school, we had a class called Modern Mythologies. Essentially what the class was just us going through the story of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we decided... we're not going to read the second book. We're instead going to watch the movie because the book is mainly just walking.
Yep. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, it's, well, think about it, right? Understand the truth of Tolkien's writing, that it was not supposed to be fantasy. Tolkien's writing was language. So, I'm sure, I don't know if this is common knowledge yet, but but when I learned it, it wasn't. But it's been a few years since I learned this piece of information, so it might be. But Tolkien was not a fantasy author. Tolkien was a linguist. He studied languages. That was his thing. And the entirety of Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion was created to create the Sindarin language, the language of the elves. Because Tolkien understood that languages, you cannot just make words, connect them together, and then boom, you have a language. Languages have cultural impact over thousands and thousands of years. And Tolkien went, if I want to create a full language, then I need to write thousands of years of cultural history. And I need to get into the nitty-gritty details of how things appeared and how names changed and how that developed in the language. And so, arguably the most successful fantasy story of all time was not actually intended to be just a fantasy story. It was a background for the language of Sindarin. That was the truth of why he wrote it. That's why it's so boring to get through, because it's a piece of academic literature. It's not intended to be a fantasy story. Even though it ended up being that, he intended it to be a piece of linguistic literature, which I think is very interesting.
That also explains why they're not stories in universe. They're in universe stories. There we go. Yeah. That explains why they're in universe stories.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So The Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, by the time he'd written the rest of the stuff, he was like, oh damn, this is actually becoming something that I didn't intend, and then he rolled with it. But originally it was just to build Cinderella. That's why there's so much stuff in there that doesn't seem pertinent to the story, because he was there to make a world. He wasn't there to tell a story. The story just kind of happened. Which I think speaks to his genius in terms of like how he could create a story within that world and build a world around it as well, and the story just kind of happened as a byproduct of that. I thought that was really, really cool. And also, I don't like when an author explains things that aren't pertinent to the story happening. The world continues to exist around the story, but we don't need details on it unless it touches the story. So saying a shadow monastery exists because it touches the story is perfect, and we can imagine the rest. Absolutely. So that's the conclusion of my thought as to what you should connect to your story as part of the bigger world. If you're going to connect something to the greater world, have it touch the story in some way, even if it's only a brief amount. If it never touches the story, then try not to mention it unless it will at some point in the future. That's called foreshadowing. So a lot of authors who have these big amazing worlds they have in their minds, and they really want to develop that a lot, and bring that to their audience and say, here, look at my world, look at how cool it is. If it's not connected to the story, it will not grab the reader as much as you want it to. The reader is looking for threads. When the reader opens a book, they are expecting the story to follow a certain thread. That's a natural expectation of reading a book. And if something that comes in from the world from the outside doesn't touch the story, the reader will follow it, and then when it goes nowhere, they will feel a little bit disappointed that they were led on, basically, in a way. So if you're going to have something from your world come in and develop, then have it touch the story. Yeah, very good advice.
I disagree.
Go for it. Tell me
Because
why.
the best parts of Harry Potter were the parts that had no relation to the story.
I think that speaks to the quality of the author, not the not necessarily the writing technique.
And this is why we don't cherry pick data.
This is why. Yeah, I think that's because the story sucked. Yeah, there's a lot of yeah, it's not a watertight story by any means. Listen, the world building in a world like that can be very interesting, but in a source book, not in the story. So if you're gonna world build about your world, make a Silmarillion. Make a book that exists for basically a written wiki page. Make a wiki page, and then put all your stuff in there, and then write a story without including that stuff, because then it implies that the readers will already know that. That's why the Silmarillion came out. If the author did that, the readers would expect something along the way. Absolutely, Baron. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. 100%. If you're going to hint at something, the reader will follow that naturally. And then when it leads nowhere, they're going to feel disappointed. It's called Chekhov's gun. It's a literary technique that basically says everything that you write about in your story must be in some way related to the story that you're telling, the plot line, or a side plot line, or whatever. Anything. So basically, Chekhov's gun tries to avoid the dreaded filler. That you can't, you should not have something in your story that is just filler. Now, I would argue that most things, it's actually very hard to disobey Chekhov's gun principles. Because if you know what you're doing, if your characters go on a certain side adventure that maybe doesn't have anything to do with the main quest, but it still has an impact on those characters emotionally, then that is related to the main plot. Especially if you have a message to tell that hits on a more emotional level, you're going to want those characters to be built up emotionally there as well. But it would be more effective if, as a writer, you had these side missions that could be somehow even tangentially related to the main plotline. That would work as well. Again, remember that you're not playing a video game, It's a story. It's one through line. It's a golden thread in the book that leads you through. And readers will be looking for that golden thread. Remember, we read a book for the main quest. We're not reading a book for different things. Unless, if you are a writer of an anthology, if you want to write a type of book that doesn't have a single golden thread, but is more a collection of short stories of characters in a world, great. Then you can have like tiny little, like 100 different golden threads, and one for each character in each short story. That's a way you can write a book as well. But yeah. You guys don't need to know about the demon that was sealed there. No. Unless it's related to the story. But that's cool, though. That's really cool. But if I read that there's a demon sealed there, my brain goes, how are we going to use that later on in the story? And if you're not gonna, then it might feel a little bit, a little bit like wasted potential. Unless you're doing it as a joke, then it's effective. So there are exceptions to every rule. Like I said, you can't say anything for 100% certain, especially when it comes to writing. It's all about preference. But this rule, I think, can be circumvented by, or this guideline, I guess, can be circumvented by the use of just like jokey dialogue. So if one of the monks from the Shadow Monastery says, you know, by the demon that we captured 1,000 years ago, and people are like, what? Never mind. And then you just kind of keep going. That can be fun as well. Depends on how you describe it.
I will say, I clearly am able to use it well. I think I made the gun a little too big in this instance.
Oh, are you talking about the childhood trauma as a thing?
Yes.
Like James is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can clearly use it well in the case of like with the shadow and the chessboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have the ability here, absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely see that. It'll just take time, that's all. Yeah, I'd be trying to tie that to the childhood trauma, yeah. If it breaks the fourth wall in a jokey way, yeah, that's a way you can do it as well, yeah. Oh, goodness. Right. What now? Should we end things? What should we do, guys? There's nothing else to read, and Rain hasn't responded to my tag yet, so I'm not going to read their stuff if they don't necessarily want me to. But thank you, Alpherg. That was really nice. I really enjoyed your reading. I appreciate it.
I'm really upset with myself because I was making sure to fix one mistake. Well, there was a few mistakes technically, but
yes,
one type of mistake that I had at the end there. Loki's pronouns are they, them.
Oh, cool. Okay. Then yeah, make that. To be fair, did you say he in the beginning, or did you just use their name?
In the beginning, I referred to them as they, but then towards the end, because this character was originally male. He, him.
Okay.
And then after I had written this, I had changed that, and I only got halfway through actually fixing all the pronouns.
Okay.
By the time you read it.
That's a tricky one. It is a tricky one for sure, especially if you're revising. It's tough to sort of go through the because you might have put one in really random places that you can't pick up. That's why you get an external proofreader. 100%. That's why you get an external proofreader, because no amount of Grammarly will pick that up for you. Grammarly will not be able to detect that you're talking about the same character. If the pronoun makes sense grammatically, then it won't matter. So yeah, you should get an extra proofreader if you are gonna, well, just for any writers out there who are like thinking of publishing or taking their work to a wider audience, external proofreaders are the thing. They will look at your work impartially much more than you will. They will tell you what to cut out. Writers who self-proofread are like lawyers who self-represent. Like it's super self-indulgent and not a good idea. Don't self-proofread. Okay. I think I actually finished something here. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I've written something. And it's quite long. But this is... Yeah, I think I'm... Ooh, I'm seeing some turns of phrase that I'm actually quite proud of here. Okay. So I'm thinking I might read mine, if that's okay with everyone. since there's nothing else to read, and I would really like some eyes on it. I wrote this to give a little bit of feedback. If everyone has the time to stick around, or if you're watching the VOD, you'll be able to see this as well. But if you wanna finally turn this around on me, since I do a lot of analysis of other people's stuff, if you wanna turn this around on me, then
Do I get to read this?
and here we go. Do you want to read it?
Probably
or-
not a good idea.
What? You can't read?
No, I'm entirely illiterate.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Should I jump in VC? It's up to you. Up to you. Yeah. So, if you're watching on the VOD, if you're here just kind of lurking, then you get a special treat today. We're gonna read my stuff. God, that feels weird in my tum tum. So hold on a second. We'll. There we go. There's Scrivener. Okay. So Scrivener, by the way, if you don't know, is an absolutely incredible. That's Spotify. Is an absolutely incredible. It's an absolutely incredible. Book writing tool that I use or used when I was still writing. That just. Yeah, it's amazing. I really, really, really like it. Okay. Let's see here. That's where we'll leave it, and we'll put things down there. Great. Okay, so, if anyone wants to... what I will say first is this was intended to be the first time that I ever described anything about the book, or the world, or the characters, or anything. So... there should be no context before this. So if you are confused by anything, it's intentional. I would love to know if anyone is confused unnecessarily. If they feel stifled by something, that would be great. Obviously, all of your feedback is appreciated here. But yeah, I welcome any feedback that you're able to give, no matter what it may be about, if there's something that you missed. So, here we go. I'm going to share my screen for you. By the way, if you are a writer and you're serious about your writing, get Scrivener. It gives you a 30-day free trial, and that 30 days is not running. It's 30 days of keeping the app open. So it's a long time. If you take a break from it and go back to writing again, it will still count. It won't have expired yet. It's great. It's a wonderful model. It's very cheap as well if you want to actually buy it for a writing tool, and it has so much stuff. It's very robust as a working engine. So this is my writing. It's set in my own original world called Aya is the name of the world, EYYA. And I'll give you the only... I'll leave things to a mystery. But for now, I wrote this about... did I write this in 2022? Yeah, when my streaming started, I started writing this in November. I used to have these focus sessions as part of the streams where I would spend 20 minutes and just write. And I was doing this as part of NaNoWriMo, which is... a very popular writing, not a contest, but like a self-contest for writers who want to just crack out as many words as they can during November of every year. And I tried to do this, and I obviously didn't meet my goals, but I did do more writing than I'd done in a long time. So this is the result of that. I'm also glad that I actually did finish the passage, so we won't be blue-balled at the end of it. So there we go. Wait, I missed stuff. I'm back. My stream froze. Oh no! Okay, well, you're back. Did you get the gist of what this is about? That's all. There should be no context for this except for the fact that it's in my own world, and that's about it. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, if there's any feedback, I would love for you to write it down and let me know And without further ado, let's begin with Tellgrinen, The Price of Mercy. Did I do enough? The question crept up to the mind of the dying girl and sliced through the silence haunting the battlefield. She shut it out and did as she had been trained to do. First, assess her surroundings. That proved to be difficult since she was taking a while to focus. Everything was very slow. She would have to be too. Vision. She could see oranges and grays, the sky, sunrise, sunset. She couldn't tell. She was outside, that made sense, but no trees. Weren't there trees before? She was sure of it. Blurry. She blinked a few times. Oh, that's worse. Something must have got in her eyes. Now that she'd drawn her attention to it, she realized they did feel a little scratchy. She raised her arms to rub them clear and then found with surprise that they did not lift. There was a pressure that she felt all over, but it was less than pain. More like a very heavy weighted blanket that had settled over her. It comforted her, pressed her into the mud and grass that lay flat underneath her. She raised her head as much as she could to check. Her peripheral vision told her there was no dark blur to suggest something was on top of her. But she didn't panic. Not being able to move started to feel like a distant issue. The world felt like a very far away place. She felt herself drifting off. Did I do enough? Wait, no time for that. She clawed her way back to the world, sluggish though she felt, and focused on her ears instead. There was a soft, irritating ringing that had been louder when she regained consciousness, but now was just palatable enough to tune out. But when she focused, she found there was nothing to hear. No screams of panic or roars of battle, no familiar hum of discordance that accompanies the melodies of two musicians in conflict, no thwip of a bowstring or slice of a blade. The battle was over, but it had left a wound behind. There was an unnatural stillness in the air. Even the wind seemed to have chosen to abandon this place. The rest of her senses followed quickly, once her focus slowly returned. She could feel the cold moisture of the mud and grass, but only on the back of her head. It soaked her hair. The rest of her was still being comforted by the weighted blanket, so she could only feel the chill in the air around her face. She could smell... No, she didn't want to smell anything. Nothing she hadn't smelled before. The taste in her mouth was sour, metallic. Her tongue felt heavier. She tried to speak and found the tiny traces of air in her lungs came out like bubbles over her throat, the sound almost too soft for even her to hear. Environment assessed, albeit unsatisfactorily. Although I'd know more if I listened. That left her feeling suddenly hollow, a yawning ache creeping through her stomach and consuming it as she remembered what had happened. Before the fighting, before all of this. She felt the tears immediately welling in already scratchy eyes. She heard the pleas again. She felt... No, she forced it down. Like the smells she still refused to let in. She felt the ache subside, but not fade. She blinked 2 tears away, both trailing down the side of her face. She welcomed the irritation they made when they got to her ears. It distracted her from remembering. This battle was the last time she would offer her verse. She would never so much as carry a tune again. She was done with it all. Things grew slow and sluggish again, things still out of focus. Her surroundings were assessed. Second, determine her safety. She couldn't assess any injuries, but at least there was no pain. There also didn't seem to be any threats around. She seemed, for now at least, in no immediate danger. Third, find the next path. At that, she was stuck. She couldn't move, there was no finding anything. But as the world continued to grow quieter, that part did not bother her. Here was comfortable. Here, she wasn't hurting anyone. Here, she could rest. Did I do enough? Again, it knocked. She was scared of the question. As calming as it was, it made her remember. She didn't want to remember. But still, it wasn't going away. It gently nudged at her, wondering if she had considered it. So finally, she gave the question a little room to breathe. It expanded in her mind, but didn't overwhelm. It simply sat and asked, and she sank into the mud, her training forgotten, looking up at the sky, and sat with it, while above her the orange blurs passed over the greys. The dying girl lay in the middle of the battlefield and continued to fade away. All her focus drew inward, no longer on her surroundings. She didn't register the light, calm footsteps sifting through the distant mud. If she did, perhaps things might have been different. So that's the first bit. That's part one. There are two more. The second part is longer, and the third part is like a finality to all three. So yeah, that's the first part. We can keep going, but I'd love to hear your thoughts at this point. Obviously, if you're watching the VOD, leave comments and stuff. That would be really, really cool as well. Oh, don't forget to interact with the stream too. Yeah, I think when I wrote when I wrote this, my intention is to provide an air of mystery, obviously, to provide some information that people don't have, to provide world building, and especially with the magic system, and hint at what it's about without like going into too much detail until later, and keep things from the perspective of the character in focus here rather than spreading out to the world just yet. And while also, yeah, I think creating an air of seriousness as well, especially with regard to starting a story with a dying character, which kind of does set the tone, which I definitely acknowledge. But yeah, my intention was really to set something up in a more how do I you know when you see something at the beginning of a movie or a TV show, and then it that's a cold open and it shows the epilogue of something, and then it goes like 72 hours earlier. That's the vibe that I intended with this. Man, that scene name is very spoilery. Indeed. It's a bit of a teaser, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, when I read this personally, it feels good to actually read it out loud. I'm glad you were getting the same vibe. And yeah, this is good. This is cool. We can keep going if you want. Alpherg, you still here?
Yeah, I'm just...
Okay, cool. What?
I should probably go lay down.
Why?
I just didn't want to interrupt.
Are you sleepy?
Getting there. I was gonna...
Oh, okay, cool. No worries.
Listen.
You can definitely go. Absolutely. Feel free. Go.
Bye-bye.
Go sleep. Have sweet dreams. And thanks for letting me read you a bedtime story before you do.
Well, you'll still... I'll wind up listening.
Oh,
So you'll still
cool.
be reading it for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Very cool. We're happy for more. Excellent. Goodbye. Okay, he's gone. Right. Then, let's keep going. This section is described as Tellgrinen arrives. Oh, man, I'm sad because I want it to be more like a... there we go. Let's see if I can kind of... There. I want it to be like top and bottom, if possible. The dimensions of Scrivener's thing are just not quite as... there we go. Okay, cool. This should be perfect, actually. Ooh, yeah, it works really well. Okay, let me just make myself slightly smaller. Perfect. Okay. Right, this one's a lot longer. But if you're here for it, I'm happy. Also, it might be better that this is not the most that this is a Tuesday morning stream, which has definitely the fewest people in it out of all the streams, which is good for me because I'm not sure about revealing this to a big audience yet, but we shall see. Larn Tellgrinen couldn't mask the sorrow on his face. All battlefields left wounds on the earth. Ones in which music had been unleashed left a void where nothing would ever recover. And this battle had leveled a city. One never really understands how much sheer ground a city can cover until one looks at the land it sat upon. The destruction spread for miles, sloping gently down toward a center. The gigantic trees that had grown and connected to eventually form what was known as Idanon had been obliterated, mostly outwards. Their trunks and branches, strong as steel as they were, lay half uprooted on the battlefield or tossed into the surrounding forests like timber, collapsed and dead. What remained of the settlements that had been built here lay in ruin, as did the beings that once inhabited them. Weapons lay bent, broken, or shattered in the mud. Ice shards stood in clusters, erupted from the ground. Great constructs of stone, wood, and dirt lay in piles. Permanent scorches splayed across larger swaths of the land. The soil was blackened, the wood had lost its colors, and plant matter had withered to a point beyond mere death. And here was a great and terrible absence, whether or not one could listen for it. The world song could no longer exist here. There was simply nothing left to enable it to. The silence ached, endlessly stretching out for release. It was answered only with more silence that stretched high up, past what once was the tree canopy, leaving the sky open and wide, oranges and greys looking down on the void. Sunrise. Tellgrinen stared hollowly at it all, his webbed feet splayed in the mud, as he stood just past the edge of the tree line. His jaw had gone slack, but not fallen open. He'd only seen destruction like this once before, and something had reopened inside him. His scaled body, usually glittering coral blue, barely reflected the light cast down by the open sky, crinkled and dried out. Even his fitted musician's robe and tunic seemed to have lost part of its hue. The swirls of green and blue faded against the brown fabric. A voice behind him, gruff and weathered, dared to cut through the silence. Some still live down there. It belonged to an old Corran man with short and clean silver hair and the mottled skin of advanced age. He stood resolutely behind Tellgrinen, not bothered that his own robe, which, unlike Tellgrinen's, hung loose around him, dragged in the mud, staining the hem brown. Tellgrinen kept his gaze ahead, on the wound in front of him. When he replied, his voice came out clear, though with the slight vocal trill that accompanies the speech of the Zelenins. You can hear them? You cannot? I haven't tried yet. Then this will be quite the long search for you if you aim to find her. How can you even... Tellgrinen had spoken too quickly and breathed in a little more sharply when he heard the last part. He dreaded even opening his ears to this place. He certainly wasn't ready to face that yet. Even if I could bear it, Mentor, how can you listen at all? The world song is gone. He gestured vaguely ahead. There's no music here anymore. The words came out, but he couldn't quite believe them. The retort came back instantly. When the last remaining beings who cling to life here are gone, that will be true. But they're not all gone yet. Jerwil approached a few steps and laid a hand on the young Zelenin's shoulder. Where there is life, there is music. Where there is life, there is music. Tellgrinen recited it back. He closed his eyes and nodded, steeling himself. He slowly reached out a hand, and his senses opened. The webbed frills that extended from his ear canals started to shudder ever so slightly. His senses started honing in on every sound he could perceive. The slow shifting of the mud beneath him, the slow swish of his tail fin rubbing against the opening created for it at the back of his tunic, the wet, unsealing sound from his eyelids blinking. Then, deeper, the soft thud of his pulse within his chest steadily beating, the sound of his scales moving over one another in chorus. And then, Tellgrinen's hearing reached the right depths. and even the slow creaking of the joints within Jerwill's aged hands whenever he moved his fingers did not escape him. He stopped hearing all of it, and instead began to listen. The sounds around him grew isolated, and instead of focusing on their origin, Tellgrinen shifted his focus to what they created. Scales scratching created overlapping calls to a wind that could not answer here. The creaking of Jerwill's joints formed a groan of tension that might have sunk into a tree if one still lived. Tellgrinen's own heartbeat sent a pulse into the very earth, a rhythm that any could hear if they were connected. But nothing was. Tellgrinen shook his head in disbelief. He expected this, but to hear no connections himself was an emptiness he wasn't used to. Still he pressed on, deepening his focus even more, now extending it outwards, to face the battlefield ahead of him. They sounded like whispers, the kind uttered when one knows no one is listening, but the words are still spoken if for nothing but to hear something. There were people, Jerwill was right, but none would leave this place. Stretching out to the first few that he found, Tellgrinen listened to the string of thoughts that came from their minds. Some were resigned, accepting of their position. Some were scared, calling upon strength that had sunk into the ground, abandoning them. Some were confused, and wondering why they could not get up. Many cried. Beneath their thoughts, the faint strands of energy that were what remained of their lives emerged from their bodies and dissipated into the air. Tellgrinen felt one life fade completely, just as he was stretching out to it. But it was at this point that Tellgrinen truly understood the nature of this place, and it was worse than he could possibly imagine. The sounds, the individual, unique melodies created by the people who lay here, moved into the air, waiting to be carried, and were lost. Abandoned. Unable to connect to the great web of sound that was the world song. They hung in the air, open-ended, like wisps of thread that had been cut at the point to which they were meant to attach, and yet persisted, wondering why nothing was there to catch them. The young Zelenin faltered. He stumbled a small, shaky step backwards and let out an even shakier breath. He felt very small. They are beyond saving, Jerwill's voice reverberated around Tellgrinen's head, brimming with cool-headedness. You are wasting time. I can't find her. Tellgrinen struggled to keep listening in the face of so much torment. I don't know which one she is. Nor I, but she is one of them. So all you need to know is how many there are. Start from there. With the last mote of focus he had left, Tellgrinen stretched out, ignoring the cries, the soft pleas for help, the fear, and simply noted when he could hear a melody. He listened further still until it felt like he was going to burst. The moment his senses reached the other side of the crater, the moment he heard the chorus of the leaves of faraway trees all around the battlefield, he stopped. 29 voices. 29 people. He committed their locations to memory, and then he fell to his knees, his ears ringing, the frills around them shivering as though gripped by a deathly cold. His senses were very suddenly yanked back into his normal range. He breathed raspy, heaving breaths. Jerwill stayed quiet, letting the waves of overstimulation wash over his student. It wasn't the volume of music he had heard, nor the range he just stretched out to perceive. Tellgrinen certainly had sufficient ability. It was the content. To hear so much sorrow in a place, to hear lives come to an end, disconnected from the world song, it is a loneliness that rocks the soul. Eventually, Tellgrinen controlled his breathing. His eyes opened, facing the ground, and his frills slowly stopped shaking. He raised his head and looked up at the torment once again. Jerwill spoke, ever stoic. How many? The young musician spoke slowly, calmer. 29. Then we have no time to waste. Yes, Mentor. So he rose, stretched out his webbed feet, and the pair of them walked into the doomed field. Tellgrinen's feet slowly sifted the mud beneath as he calmly passed through large collections of debris from both tree and hut. He began to direct himself toward the nearest voice he'd heard. He hoped inwardly that he wouldn't have to visit all 29 sites. It was difficult to believe that Idanon was a ruin. It was one of the greatest cities in Sholnaria. He'd read about it in his first classes. It was renowned as one of the rare places in the country still open to the practice of music. And music did this. Not for the first time in his life, Tellgrinen internalized that thought and held it. I am going to break for just a moment to recognize that there are many very, very long sentences here. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I, as I've said before, have a penchant for run-on sentences, and I'm noticing that some of them are coming up here. I'm trying to keep the sentences varied in length, which I see has succeeded in various places, but there are still very long ones, and it can be a problem. So just watch out for that. It didn't take long to find the first body. A quoll, a warrior judging by the cracked leather adorning them and the shattered weapons beside them. The large avian being was lying against the shredded ruins of a hut, and had most likely been thrown into it. Their brown and auburn feathers had been drenched in mud, and their wings were destroyed and bloodied, kept spread open by the many points of impact from the splintered wood behind them. Their body looked broken, dark patches rising to the surface of the skin where feathers had fallen off. Tellgrinen bent down to be at eye level with them. His hand drew up to the feathered face, brushing mud away and bending down to let them see him more clearly. Their head tilted towards him weakly. Their eyes, slightly glazed over, found his. They spoke with a warble through a cracked beak, one of the worst types of pain for a quoll. They did not have long left. I am not going to try and mimic the bird language. Ah, hello, taters. I'm not mimicking bird language, but I will go, and that's it. Right, I can stream as well. Yeah, I am streaming. Can you see things?
Yes.
Indeed. Right. Tellgrinen sighed, but not in irritation. He simply didn't speak the language. I'm sorry, I don't understand. He paused, weighing his words, speaking in Aeon, and hoping that they could at least understand, if not speak, the universally taught language. I'm looking for a child, a Corrin girl, 12 years old, short, dark brown hair, green eyes, bronze skin, a little thinner than average. I believe she lived here. The quoll dared not raise their voice above a garbled whisper, lest they set off a cough. Their golden brown eyes slowly came back into focus, flitting up and down as they spoke. Oniana. They blinked slowly, firmly. A quoll's affirmation. Names did not require a shared language. She was here. And well known enough that the first person Tellgrinen interacted with knew who she was. Even now, after everything that had happened, he was still proud. He couldn't hide the slight eagerness that came out in his voice. Do you know where she is now? The quoll paused for a moment, catching their breath. The drone of silence that weighed heavily on the battlefield persisted. A few wood shavings came loose and skittered to the floor as the clawed hand at the top of their wing slowly pointed away, further to the center of what remained of the city. Their eyes remained fixed on Tellgrinen, struggling to stay conscious. Tellgrinen nodded, relieved. Thank you. I am truly grateful. Before standing, he took a moment to assess the damage the avian being had taken. He was no doctor, but he knew there was nothing he could do. Instead, he simply asked, Are you in any pain? His hand motioned to the quoll's beak, signaling he understood the wound's significance. The quoll maintained their gaze. They slowly shook their head, a universal no. Tellgrinen nodded once in response. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I have to keep searching. She could still be alive. He stood up, looking down at the dying warrior. I'm sorry. Then he set off in the direction which the quoll had pointed. They watched him as he went. Approaching the center of what was once Idanon made him feel even heavier than standing on the outskirts. The lack of music was astounding. Even in a land where music of any kind was forbidden, the world song persisted regardless of the denial of it. Here it was as if it had been ripped from the roots. It left Tellgrinen feeling rudderless himself, swaying through the ruins of the city, looking for Oniana. It still wasn't easy to think about how she left. And all the while, Jerwil kept pace behind him, silent as the battlefield, giving his student the peace he needed. It took 7 more stops to get a more accurate picture of where to find her. More than one person Tellgrinen encountered had already passed on, but each person that could still communicate knew Oniana. They all knew her. They passed the inner ring of destroyed trees that represented the center of the city, and the pair came upon what must have been the site of a battle between 2 or even more powerful musicians. There was barely anything left of the thick trees that once stood here. As he grew closer to where she had to be, his pace increased, even his breathing quickened. This was taking too long. And that was when he saw her. So that's the second part. And then we'll quickly move on to the end. Did I do enough? Everything has slowed to a crawl. The dying girl had let the question run its course as her mind unfolded like a flower in bloom, displaying all. More than the battle. More than her life here. The escape. I was going to write more here, but I stopped. The tears steadily and silently flowed, for nothing but the lamenting of a life full of doubt, but ending with titanic conviction. At least, she thought, at least I'm sure now. I did enough. Yes, you did. That is intended to be Tellgrinen's voice here, as he finds her right at the end. And that's it. So those are the 3 parts. The third one is like a mini ending to the connection of both of the parts. The first one was obviously with Oniana, the second one with Tellgrinen, and then they come together here at the very end. And it's meant to build the world a little bit. It's also meant to convey the seriousness of what can happen here. It's meant to convey the style of magic that is being used without being overtly confusing about it. And it's also meant to do a little bit of species building as well. Like there are bird people and Tellgrinen is a fish person. And yeah. So there's a lot of stuff here behind the intention of the first little chapter, I suppose. But yeah, that's it. And I don't think I've read that in front of people ever. So that was quite cool. And now I'd like to know what you think. I would appreciate feedback if you have any. Titanic, is that implying that this is an Earth-like world or a world used because the readers know what it means? Titanic meaning like just big, like of a titan. The like the definition of the word Titanic just means enormous, just like really, really big.
Gotcha.
I do love a good fish species. Yes, same. Aquatic species are awesome. And he is
and
a fish.
Heavily underrepresented.
Correct. I love fish species. Good thing I woke up when I did. Hello, Alex. It's so nice to have you here. But yeah. Okay, yeah. So what did you think? I would love to know.
So cool.
You liked it?
I did. I liked that
Awesome.
through the whole thing you really kept the feeling, like the emotion, the tenseness, like
okay.
the vibe. I'm kind of having trouble finding the word, but like that feeling was just clear through the whole thing. There wasn't moments of like, wondering if we're still in that tense moment. It was just like carried on through the whole thing really well.
I like that. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That was definitely the intention, so I'm glad that came across. It might have also been influenced by my reading as well, though. Like, my tone of voice definitely can influence an interpretation if I'm reading it out loud.
Definitely, of course.
But,
yeah. But I think, like, just, like, because I was watching the words as you read. And I think just from, like, the way that it was written and I mean, like, obviously you do lots of describing and like there's lots of descriptive moments, but they didn't detract from it, I think is what I mean. Like, even when you're describing those things, it's still keeping you in that moment of like heavy emotion, you know? I just thought that was like great. That part was like, because for me, I really love over describing things in real life and in my writing.
I had to. There was so much more in the first draft. I had to really like focus it down because I noticed that I was getting distracted in the actual world building, that I kind of got it kind of ran away from itself, and I had to bring it back. And that was definitely something that I worked on in future drafts of this. Until now, this is what you get. So yeah, I'm glad that came across as well.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, because I do that. When I read other people's writing and they've done that, I really I notice it more.
Okay.
And
nice.
it does like definitely pull away from the emotion of those things. So I noticed that wasn't happening in this story. Like that to me at least, I didn't think that you like described too much to the point where we were pulled out of the scene and we forgot the feeling we were supposed to be having, and then we come back to the scene. Like, I didn't find that. I felt like it had a good flow of that the whole time.
Very nice. Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that did come across. I only caught about like 10 minutes of that, but I already got a great sense of the tone in the world. Oh, cool as well. Yeah. Well, by now
thank you, Alex.
Tone, yeah. By now I can also, but vibe also works. Don't worry about it.
I was trying to get tone though.
Oh yes, it's also fairly obvious now that magic in my world is music-based and very much related to the kinds of natural frequencies of sound that you can hear around you and how you can connect to those. And the actual magic thing is that people who are like everyone on the world of AI has this. I draw a lot of inspiration when I create magic systems. I really like magic being something that you can't really pin down, something that retains an air of mystery and mythos, like the Force from Star Wars. That's definitely an inspiration. I love the Force as something that is just, it's super powerful. Your belief in it is what matters more than anything else, and if you believe you can do it, you can probably do it. Training refines that, but really it's just a matter of self-belief and courage and self-esteem, and that can really help you here. And if you have that, the Force can basically do anything, and I like that idea. I like the fact that there's still so much mystery around it, but I also like developing the sort of details of it as well. So when creating this, there's more. The biggest challenge in creating a magic system that is as powerful and potentially destructive as the Force, but also relating it to music, has a whole host of connotations for how the world reacts to that. Because like playing a melody, like actual music without a capital M, also has the potential to harness that ability, which can be destructive if you don't channel it correctly, which means that you'll find as the story develops that some areas, it was implied here in the story, but some areas of the world have banned music entirely. Like no one's allowed to like sing or play music or anything, which has huge impacts on the culture that music affects every culture on our earth and has done so since the beginning of cultures. And growing up without any form of music can seriously affect you, sometimes in very negative ways. So seeing the results of that is something that I was always very interested in doing, because music is such a passion of mine. So blending that with fantasy writing was something that I was interested in doing. So yeah, the magic system in AI is music based and very much in connecting your frequency with the frequency of the earth, and then using that to like alter things and manipulate the environment.
I love that. When you were describing how he was like kind of feeling through the world, like it gave me like, it reminded me of fungi and like how they have like that connection, and it's not electricity, but like it's likened to that, and it gave me that like, under the world everything's connected. And I really like could picture that, because I've watched, because I'm a nerd, a lot of documentaries on that fungi.
The
so it was,
mycelium
really cool
the mycelium connection, like like Star Trek Discovery, like the mushroom spore mycelium thing. So there's a thing. I don't know if you've seen Star Trek Discovery, but in that show, they discover a way to travel without warp speed, which is like how Star Trek does hyperspace, but that's how they do like FTL travel. But the ship, the Discovery is the name of the ship, and the team discovers a mycelium network of like space mushroom things that also connect to the fabric of the universe, and they can travel even faster than warp speed using these mushroom networks if they have a part of that mushroom network on their ship in their reactor core. And it reminds me of that as well. Like just use mushrooms, man. They are more connected than we think.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like what I was picturing it in my head. Like, not that they are using mushrooms like quite in like your story, but
that
fully
vibe.
that connected, everything's like linked, and he kind of was like, you know, sending out his thought through that, you know, web or whatever. That's fully what I was picturing, and it's like super cool.
I'm very happy that you took that from that, because that is the intention, that it is kind of like a network. And how shall I put this? I do have mushroom people in this world as well. So and they connect in very much that way too. So that's quite cool. You remember when we did Daggerheart and we created Upa Chipa, the little mushroom man? Yeah, he's part of he's part of the same world as well. He's a little mushroom guy.
That's amazing.
Where there is life, there is music was like one of the first things I heard. I was sold from that moment. Oh, good! Very cool, because that's like one of the main messages, I think. One of the main messages that I intend to show with a project like this, and I do intend this to be an actual book, potentially a book series. It's definitely like a long-term goal of mine. I'm not just writing short stories. What I intend is for this to be a saga. And that is one of the underpinning themes for sure. Like, where there's life, there's music, and how a lack of music affects life in different places of the world is also something that I really like to explore as well. MJ inspired by Star Wars? No. I know. Isn't it wild? I think what has mainly drawn me to Star Wars is the Force. Like, I love the Force. I love that it's this unknowable thing that everyone on the ground in the galaxy of Star Wars seems to ascribe personal qualities to it, as if it's not just it's the energy of the universe. It doesn't think or feel at all. It just is. And people ascribe this will or intention to it as if all it's doing is try to achieve natural energy equilibrium. That's it. And people who use it sort of bend it this way and that, but it will always achieve that equilibrium. And no, by the way, I'm not talking about an equal amount of dark side users and an equal amount of light side users. I'm talking about like the natural darkness and light that exists in nature, and those who would seek to defend that energy equilibrium, i.e. Jedi, and those who would seek to destroy that equilibrium, i.e. Sith, or due to the traditional Star Wars mythos, excuse me. That's the kind of, I'm fascinated by that constant battle between those who would seek to preserve nature's equilibrium and those would seek to undermine it and destroy it. And and places where that cannot be found are also places that feel hollow on another level, as we've seen here in this battlefield that was described here. If there's no connection to the natural frequency that the world has, then it has a whole host of problems. Like, souls can't move on, and their energy can't be transferred, and like things can't grow there anymore, and it's a whole new level of destruction. So yeah, very heavy stuff. And I think what I intended by having this first was setting a tone that I could potentially go very deep and dark, especially with, like, I mean, the person dying is 12, but also later on there will be lighter moments, but I like leading with something dark because I think it pulls you in more, and then you can have that release in the next chapter of like someone maybe a little bit lighter, and maybe the mood gets a little bit less depressing as well. So yeah, we'll just kind of mix that up and see. I might also not start the book like that as well. We'll see. But I feel like I intended it to start off the book, so I feel like it does do that. But yeah.
I really like that as the start of the book for the same thing that you said earlier. Like, that was fully the vibe that I was getting of like, you start out, you know, the fade to the battlefield, and then you kind of just get that perspective of the person who doesn't even realize what's going on, and like that so sets the tone. But like you said, like you can fully go to a different vibe for your next chapter or your next part, as long as like I mean, I think that it needs to be done right, but I think that it can totally be done where the reader is still going, but I remember that dark thing. But we're having fun now. This is a good thing. This is we're learning. We're experiencing this fun thing. But I remember that dark thing, and I think it fully.
Seed.
Yeah, I think it fully like sets that tone without forcing you into a dark tone for the whole book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would be great.
Awesome. I'm happy you think that way. You know what's the most balanced gray Jedi? I'd like you to be quiet now for several seconds. Just keep your some thoughts you can keep to yourself, I think.
Listen, I didn't say it out loud.
May the Force be with you.
You know what's even more balanced is Grillwood.
No, it's just not. It's just not. That's such a lazy way to bring that into a conversation. Jesus. Do better.
The joke is lazy at this point.
Oh my, it's such a shit post at this point. God. May the Force be with you is such a fascinating idea when you think about it. It's kind of just saying, may the gravity be with you, basically. When you think about it on a practical sense, yes. May the Force be with you is more just, I see it as more, I know you're like making the joke about Force being gravity, but the intention behind that expression is, may you walk in balance with nature, essentially. Because the Force describes the equilibrium of the universe. And basically, it just says, may you walk with equilibrium. May your energy not be unbalanced. And it's awesome. I really like it. It's an idea I've never really thought of, but the Force basically just being the life essence of the universe that people manipulate and worship. That's so damn cool. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's not my opinion on it. That's just what it is. It's just facts. And I don't like that people... What is very interesting is that people outside of the Star Wars universe, like real life people, they do the same thing that, not to put myself above other people, but they do the same thing in their analysis of the Force. So many people do the same thing in their analysis of the Force as characters in the Star Wars universe also do about the Force. They make the same analytical mistakes about the Force as the characters do. It's so interesting to me. So, and one of the biggest mistakes that people will make about Star Wars and the Force is they will personify it. They will ascribe the so-called will of the Force as something, as like a god, like a malevolent god. It's a natural thing that humans do when they see the energy of the universe and they ascribe some kind of narrative meaning or purpose to it. And really, the Force is just the energy. It's just trying to achieve equilibrium. Darksiders upset that balance. Lightsiders try and return it. That's it. Now that is not an equilibrium. The Darksiders trying to unbalance it is what the Force tries to correct with its own natural things. But it's not doing it as an opinion. It's doing it because that's its nature. That's just what it's just what it does. It's the universe. It acts like that. It doesn't act with an intention. It doesn't act with any kind of human or personable characteristics at all. It just is. And I believe it is a mistake philosophically to ascribe those personal characteristics to the equilibrium of the universe, because then you start to judge it. And as soon as you judge it, like, why would you? It's beyond any kind of standard of judgment. All it's trying to do is just rebalance things. That's it. And there are characters in the Star Wars world who will say things like, man, the will of the Force sucks. I don't want to live under this like predestination type shit, like predetermination, like everything is fated and stuff. It's not fated. You can live whatever life you want. It's really just about how nature like brings balance to itself and kind of achieves equilibrium and stuff. That doesn't really, most of the time, it's not going to affect your life at all unless you want to be a big player on the stage. And then if you are corrupted by the dark side, then yeah, you'll find yourself in a harder position. But there've been many characters who fall into that trap of ascribing those personal characteristics to the Force, which I think is a big mistake. And the Star Wars universe also agrees, because all of those characters end up either dead or humbled or redeemed in some manner or another. And And I wish that that analysis would filter into the actual discourse a little bit more.
Well, and I
the
fully
full-
think that those characters were put there to show us that,
Yes.
and people are just missing that.
And
They
people
hear the first part,
yeah.
and they see the second part, and they don't put them together.
Yeah, unfortunately that happens all too often, yeah. Especially in the games. There's a character called Kreia, who, if you're a big Star Wars like gaming fan, if you've played the Knights of the Old Republic series, especially number 2, because that's when she comes out, her philosophy is very interesting. But again, she's falling into that trap of that I don't really see a lot of people acknowledging, and it's the most important thing. Like, it's the reason her character exists. She falls into the trap of ascribing, she personifies the Force. And that's it. The Force is just a silly guy. It's a great analysis, Alex. Totally nails what I had in mind. Yeah, so that's that, really. That was my reading. Thank you all for enjoying it. I appreciate the feedback as well. I'm glad that I got things across. I hope that others will see this and provide more feedback as we go. Would you like to see more? If I wrote more, would
Yes.
you read more? Because I will post this in Discord as well. I'll save this as a thing. I don't know how Scrivener is going to actually do this, but yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
One of the things that just popped into my mind is when he was feeling overwhelmed by like reaching out and having that like so much like sad hit him, you know,
big
like
sad,
all
yes.
of the feelings, and yeah, the big sad, the spicy sad.
With the big sad hit him.
I really appreciated how that was like put together. Like it wasn't like he was being dramatic. Like, it was very clear that he wasn't like over dramatizing it or making it about him. It's just that he was overwhelmed by the magnitude, and I think that was like really well put together.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm
I
glad.
just remembered that.
I'm glad to hear that came across as well. I see this as a win. Is there anything more that you would want to see from this? Just to try and... Because I'm now... At the end of this, there's still stuff that I want to add in there. There was like... Especially the last paragraph, I left it quite short. I intended to leave it short, but there was an interrupted sentence there that I forgot that I didn't complete. But do you feel that there is a... Like, there's a natural moving on point from that? Like, what chapter do you think could come next? Like, is there something that you would want to learn about next, or... some kind of thing that you would want to introduce next, or any questions that you raised during the first part that could be explained in another part? Anything that you'd want to see from a next installment?
I think it depends on like which direction in time you're going. Are you going backwards to tell us how those two people are linked? Are you going forwards to how the world reacts to this catastrophic event?
I intended to go backwards.
Yeah. So definitely I would love to hear how those two people are linked, and cool. Obviously, like, you really showed us that sorry, what was her name, the 12-year-old?
Oniana.
You showed us that Oniana was like clearly important and memorable to those people, and like was she just like really good at something, or was she like a really great person, or like really was things that my brain wanted to know. Like,
okay, cool.
Like, oh, is she just like so nice or kind, or does she do lots of community service, or like, you know, maybe she's like super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, does she just give everyone gifts? Like, what? Like, that really, you know, like, did she pull the community together, or did she blow it up? Like,
yeah, she uses her gifts. She uses her gifts of music to make the most delicious chocolate for everyone in the city. That's why they know her.
She is Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And the Oompa Loompas are next.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like, I was really interested in more of her story, like why she was so renowned, and also very interested in the relationship with the mentor.
Tellgrinen,
like, obviously,
and his mentor. Right,
it's a mentor. Yeah, like, obviously it's a mentor. But like, are we mentoring just the music? Is it a life coach situation? Like, how long have they been together?
Yeah,
Like,
cool.
like,
I
is it
that as
like
well.
Jedi and Master, or like, you know, is it more than that? Like, I was interested in that too.
Okay, awesome. I will keep that in mind. So my plan was to go backwards. Also, my plan with this whole saga of a book is to have like a... You know how Game of Thrones jumps between characters a lot, and you've got a lot of... It's not Game of Thrones that only does this, but I think of Game of Thrones because it's one of the most popular examples. But yeah, I like the idea of having lots of different characters acting seemingly independently throughout the world, but then they come together and their paths cross at certain times, and then they leave again. That's the intention I have with this series as well. So we might jump...
Like Avengers.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. We might jump through different characters at different times, but I think for these two characters, that's a natural stepping off point to show, like, the kind of relationship they have with each other and things. Also, I will be more obvious that we're going back in time as well. I think that might be... Yeah, it'll be more... I definitely intend this to be an ending point for at least their relationship if she's gonna die. And when I first wrote this is when I learned about fridging, by the way. It was when we talked about fridging like a couple of streams ago.
I remember that stream.
And when I wrote this, I suddenly stopped for a moment and went, am I fridging a 12-year-old? That's fucked. So I looked up online and I was like, am I doing this? Is this happening? And I realized, okay, we're good. And the reason it's good is because she does not exist to die. She exists to do things, and she does have agency in the world beyond what is happening here. So I don't think that I've done it. It's really more of a subjective thing. So if anyone else thinks that that's a danger of happening, then I would love to be let known so that I can avoid that. But her actions exist beyond just her death. Like, it's not just about Tellgrinen being sad about her being dead, and I hope that does come across. But that is a concern. That is something that I've thought about, and it is something that I address, at least in my mind anyway. And when further parts of the book come out, that's a magnificent sentence removed of its meaning.
I think to fully know if that's what you're doing, we would have to see.
You'd have to read
her
more.
story.
Yeah.
Like,
which is good. Yeah.
Are you fattening up the pig to slaughter it, or are they their own character and have their own story, like you said? Then, like, that would be the difference, you know?
It would be different. So fridging specifically is how the character dies. So if the character is raised to die, then that would be problematic. And if the character dies,
well, that's another thing.
Yeah, when they do die, is that character's death used for emotional motivation for another character, usually a male character, which in this case he is, and that's also problematic. So that's why I see where it can run the risk of that, but I am doing my best to avoid it. So if it does come out anyway, I will change it, of course. But yeah. Also, Alex wants bacon now because you talked about pigs.
I just mean like they are two different tropes. They're both problematic in their own right. But you said specifically that you want to tell more of her story.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I think I would have to hear the rest of the story.
Okay.
Because again, if you do that, if you do lead it up to, I'm just making her real likable so you can hate the fact that I killed her off, that would be problematic.
That would
then
not be good, I will definitely take steps to avoid that, and if it does come out, I will absolutely change it. Obviously, I'm a victim to my own biases, so when it comes out, I would love to hear other feedback and see if they think that it's and then I'll change it for sure.
Yeah. I think, speaking of the only thing that kind of caught my, I don't know, like, it wasn't like a red flag, or it wasn't like an ick or anything. Like, it wasn't drastically bad. There was one thing that kind of seemed just a little bit off.
Yeah. You can say you got the ick if you did.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like problematic or.
Okay.
But the only thing that's kind of seemed like a little bit off, and it could just be a character thing, like it could be an intentional choice because we don't know the characters very well. But when Tellgrinen was talking to the bird at the beginning, when he was like leaving that person, it did seem like he did say like I'm sorry or whatever, but he didn't like, to us, because we can hear his thoughts or whatever, he said that he can't help this person. I'm not a doctor, I can't help them. But the way that he spoke to them just seemed a little bit like he didn't tell them that information, and it seemed like maybe he didn't care as much about them, which could be the case because he's looking for this other person.
Yes.
Could be a character choice.
Yeah.
And I think just because we don't know the characters, that was the thing that I was like, well, I'm not sure.
To expand
and
to
once we
expand
get to
on
know
that
him,
would
he
be
more
good.
might.
I think I could. Yeah, let me open that up quickly, and I'll just write a little note about that. To expand on his thought process would be probably good there. Give me a second. He goes to the qual. Yeah, the qual or the bird people.
Yeah.
Let me see.
And like it could be, like an unintentional thing. I don't know. That was the one thing that I was like, hey, well, maybe that's not fully complete or a fully finished thought or.
Say something about how he's So my intention there is to communicate that he, despite the fact that he has the capacity for sympathy, he has a weak spot when it comes to finding Oniana, especially if she might be in danger, and things tend to get more tunnel vision-y as he moves because he's searching. He's basically trying to shut himself off so he doesn't feel as much of the shit that's going on around him. He just wants to find her. And I think part of his sorry is more sorry that I can't spend your last moments with you. Sorry that I'm more focused on this than I am on your life. And that is a flaw of his for sure that I wanted to come through. I will definitely expand on that. He is emotionally distanced from what is going on there. Because he is focused.
Like his mind is already elsewhere.
Yeah. Possibly to his own detriment, and it makes him seem purposefully as more like there's a cold streak to him where he kind of is valuing the life of Oniana because he's more connected to her than this random stranger, when in actual fact their lives are both of equal meaning,
Right.
Yeah.
And I
think I can expand on that.
As you talk about it, I think that's why it stood out to me, because I know from talking to you, like that's never something that you would do. Like that's not how you would feel
but readers
in that situation because you don't view people. Right, the readers don't. And I don't know if that's maybe my bias because I know you. Is like, because I know that's not how you would feel about that, but then that's what he did. Maybe that's why it stood out, but like
describing
maybe
that would
it
be
just
good,
like
I appreciate that.
Yeah, like even if it was like a thought that he had that explained why or something. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
And like I said, once you get to know him more, that might be super apparent. And we're like, oh, I get why he did that. Yeah. Yeah,
there's a part of him that is. I want Tellgrinen to come across as still. I mean, I've described him as young before already, but he is not. There are some things that he lacks based on his upbringing and based on how he came here, and those sorts of things do come through in this moment. So there is context, but I understand that the reader does not know what that context is. So, yeah, I think I think to expand on that, even just a hint at it with like a sentence would be good. Yeah. Okay.
For sure. Yeah. And like the reader also doesn't know you. So maybe they wouldn't have raised their eyebrow at that, either. I don't know. But just from my perspective, that was something.
Yeah. I want to work on the audiobook if that ever exists. I would love to make an audiobook. That would be great. I love interconnected POV characters with interweaving stories. That shit slaps. I know, it's awesome. I would love to make a story like that. That's my plan. My plan is to have like 10, 20 different characters. Not that many, but you know what I mean. Like just a bunch of different characters that all sort of interweave and they cross paths every now and then they leave again. Some of them are enemies, some of them are friends, and yeah, I like that idea. It lets me, what I want to do is, I have an underlying theme to the story, but I don't want it to be a my intention for this story is not to be focused in on one thing only. I would like to entertain a reader with the underlying theme appearing in many different other stories that can build a world as a whole, that can show you different cultures that exist here, different languages, different traditions and attitudes to music and stuff like I feel like the world that I've made, I want to share without feeling like it's a Tolkien novel. So I want to connect it to to connect it to the underlying themes as well, because I'm not trying to create a language, as we've already said, but yeah, so that's my plan. It's a bit daunting for me because the world is actually, the size is quite big. There are a lot of areas here, and there's also one huge plot point that I haven't mentioned yet for good reason. It's still going to come up. But yeah, I think that I think that I could do it, but it is daunting because that kind of strategy when writing runs the risk of readers being a little too overwhelmed with information sometimes, especially in the beginning of a book when you're still learning about it. So I have to be careful with that. I was planning on writing a little bit about there was going to be a character who had a historical, like, academic interest in the world, and through that character I could expand more about the history of how this world came to be and what's going on in it. So that's something that I could do as well.
The first thing I thought as you were saying that is that exactly.
Cool.
Like, that's as you were saying, like, I've got all this, like, lore that I want to put together, and, like, I don't want to, pull a Tolkien. I was like,
just write
a nerd. You need a nerd. That's 100%, because I legitimately have written D&D characters for that, where I was joining for a couple sessions, joining a campaign where the DM was like, I really want to pivot because we just sort of finished a story arc. I want to pivot and I want to drop, like, a bunch of lore, and I'm going to bring you in at this weird point because this is the only opportunity you have to play with us. And I was like, hey, why don't I be the lore nerd? They're like, I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. And then, you just have a book that the DM is like, oh, yeah, your book actually says this really great piece of information.
Awesome. Very cool. I like that.
Yeah. So that's fully what I thought when you were describing that.
Nerd characters are a very good window into a lore exposition without it feeling too heavy, because they could just make a comment on something and it would it's definitely one of the easier ways to wax expositional without boring. It still has the potential to bore, but it depends on how you write it. And there's also the opposite is also true, which is quite interesting, and it's a very common writing trope. And that is the existence of people who don't know a lot about the world, who are introduced to it. So especially if you're creating a new world, it's a very popular trope rather, for the readers to be introduced to a character who knows very little about it and then is introduced to it at the same time as the reader is. And that sort of character can help with the reader understanding a lot about the world as well, because other characters will explain things to that character, but really it's also an explanation for the reader as well. Again, definitely one of the more simpler tropes to explaining that, and something that experienced readers will recognize instantly. They'll know exactly what kind of character this is, and they'll know that character was made for the reader. But, that doesn't make it not useful anymore. And I don't think it's a cliche.
Yeah, but it's like, the tutorial character in a video game.
Yeah, and I also have a tabletop story about it as well. Like, when I played Season 2 of my Star Wars campaign, there was a character there. The player didn't really know much about the Star Wars universe beyond the movies. And I was like, well, make a character who's, a little bit dumb for that kind of stuff, and then we'll learn about it together. And that was what they did. So they made a character with a very sheltered life and backstory, and then they got to learn about it as the player did. It was awesome, very organic.
That's literally how I ended up playing a time traveler in the campaign that I'm in.
Cool.
Is that they were traveled from a different time on a different plane and ended up in this world. Because I was the only one that hadn't played in this world before. Okay. So 100% how I ended up playing the character I play now.
I like this. Yeah, that's super
same
cool.
vibe.
Yeah. That's very effective.
But, like,
very effective.
I've fully read characters like that and know that is the thing. But, like, I guess it can be done wrong, but I don't personally find a problem with it when I read them. I'm like, oh yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
We're learning together, you know. And
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily that recognizing it takes me out of the world, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did someone say time travel? There will be no time travel in my book. There will be no time travel in my book. I find time travel very interesting. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fascinating.
It's so confusing.
Writing it sucks. I hate writing time travel. It's so difficult because you have to, before you write time travel, you have to have your established theory of time travel in your universe before you write it. And if you don't have that fully established from the get-go, it's chaos, and not in a good way. Not in like a, oh, we're along for a cool ride way. It's like, it's a what the fuck is going on way, and I'm confused, and I don't want to read this anymore. Like, that's the risk of time travel. Love exploring it as a medium of someone else's, not mine. I don't want to do it. No. Do not tell me about Doctor Who. I know it's about time travel. I know. I'll watch it at some point. I find it fascinating. I don't have the time to commit to it, let alone on the level that you do. I'm already a Star Wars nerd, all right? My fandom is complete in my head. I have watched a number of clips recently about the newer Doctor Who. They've come up on my TikTok, and I am fascinated by it. Especially one of the latest episodes had Maestro in it, which I think is very interesting because that's also related to music. But yeah. Hi, Kit. Welcome. Thank you for announcing your presence in such a unique and special way. Just in time for the end of the stream as well, since we are going to end it there. It's been 2.5 hours of me talking, and I feel much more awake now. And also, soon, things in my life are happening. I'm expecting a call later a little bit, so I need to emotionally prepare myself for that. I'll let you know what that is in a second. Well, in a little bit of time. But for now, thanks for listening along to my reading, and thanks for giving feedback, Taters. I appreciate it. It really does help a lot. And this is... I was always hoping to end up reading my own stuff during a reading corner. I didn't expect it to be today, but I'm very glad that it was received in the way that it was, and I will definitely be writing more. And yeah, I'm going to... Yeah, I will...
Yeah, I like that.
I will definitely be writing more. And I'll post it on Discord if anyone else wants to read it in full. So yeah.
Are you... Is this the only thing you have fully like fleshed out right now?
This is the
like,
fully fleshed
written?
out thing. That's the only thing that I have.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I have
For
I have a wiki that I made with all of the world stuff on it. I haven't finished that because that's a world-sized world. I don't think I'll ever be finished it. But the documents are there. I spent years just building before I decided to write this story within it. So this story is just a product of everything that's going on behind the scenes. This is just the part that I'm prepared to share with the public at this point.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Are you planning to do like a series of like short parts like this, or are you planning to do like some longer parts, or don't have a fully fleshed out plan
like
yet?
have it fleshed out as a book as I release stuff, or just kind of jump around and release
Well,
parts
I mean,
like
like,
that? Is...
I mean, like, no, like for like, because this is like a shorter, like we'll call it a short story. This is like a short story within the big story. Are you planning to? Because I know you said you were gonna have all these different sort of streaming narratives going on intertwined. Are you planning to do like this little short story and then that short story and then that short story and have it like a series of short stories?
Yeah,
I love that.
I think I might start releasing things as short stories. Whether or not they make it into the final book idea is can be decided later. But I think what I'd like to do for now is help develop the world through the writing of those stories and just have so the next thing I'll release will probably be a jump around to a different character in a different time, and yeah, it'll be cool.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah. Very cool. I know
fun.
for a fact you'd vibe with the new season, especially the most recent episode. It's utterly impeccable. I'm sure it is. Did you hear that Shutigato learned how to say his own name after interviews on TV? Huh? Really?
Oh yeah.
He only knows how to pronounce his own name at
Shuti.
26 because he goes by his middle name professionally, not his first name, which I can't remember. Shuti's his middle name. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Wait, how? So is Shuti how you pronounce it? Or
I'll send you the Instagram video about it, but you
Okay.
actually pronounce the N a little bit. But I've only ever spoke
yeah.
English,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Right.
But
right,
yeah,
right.
you actually kind of pronounce the N at the beginning a little bit.
Nshuti. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
What is the sort of ethnic origin of his name? Is it Nigerian? It sounds
know.
vaguely Nigerian. Let's see. Where does he? Yeah. Ah, it's Rwandan. Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah. He was actually born in Rwanda. Interesting. Oh, whoa. Oh, I didn't know this about him. Wow. His parents fled the Rwandan genocide. That's crazy. So he was born there, and then they left when the genocide hit in 94. That's wild.
Very cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't know about
Didn't
the
know that.
origins of his name past that. Okay, okay. Damn. That's quite the backstory.
Mhm.
Okay. Right. I studied the
Also,
Rwandan
yeah.
genocide in university. It was rough. If you're feeling up to it, it's important history, I think, and also very very useful for applying it to stuff happening today. But and especially because it was not that long ago. Like it was in 1994. But yeah, very very sad part of history for sure. Yeah, him and his family fled the genocide when he was 2. Oh, okay. All right, cool. On that,
Alright.
I think I think I shall go, and I shall see you all in the next one where we do more lore and exposition dumping in Mass Effect. I don't know, Taters, were you here for the last one? Did you catch the last
I
one?
haven't been here for a couple recent,
Okay.
like
Well, last time
Mass Effect ones. I'm very behind.
we actually we did the Shadow Broker DLC, which I'm not sure if you've done, but it
I don't think
ends
so.
up with you in the Shadow Broker's lair, and you get to read about all the stuff that he was looking into, all the information that he has, particularly as it pertains to your crew, and he has
Ooh.
insane privacy violations on your crew, which I have decided that canonically Shepard has not read and instead has disseminated to her crew to read. But because it's content and very interesting, we are reading them out of character. Because some of it is hilarious. Like learning Jacob's workout routine, literally, like that's on there. and Miranda's tendency to consult like dating apps and find the perfect mate, which is also very interesting. And Jack has like
Stellar.
this beautiful poem and things, and it's just it's
I
really
love Jack.
really cool stuff. But obviously, if I were Shepard, there's no way in hell that I would read it. So yeah, we're reading it, but Shepard is not.
Very cool. It's a good way to get around it.
Yeah, I do think they've written that experience into his doctor. It's really interesting the way they've incorporated that. Oh, really? Oh, that's so cool. Now time for me to go watch some Docky Who from 1978, when for some reason they decided to do an entire story on a blue screen in 1978. Wait, haven't you watched these already? I thought you
What?
were trying to like get through them. Are you watching them again after you've finished it again? Like, don't you need a break? Even I need a break from Star Wars, you know? Like, we took a long break
I
from
feel
Star
like-
Wars media. Now Hewan and I are watching the Kenobi show again, so that's cool.
Nice. I feel like because of how different all of the Doctor Who content is,
That's
you
true.
can get away with watching so much more of it.
It's just very diverse, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
right. Bye, Taters. Have a nice day. Thanks for being here, and your
Bye,
feedback
this was fun. Join the Discord.
very welcomed, and yeah, join the Discord. All right, see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. For the rest of you, we'll end this nice and quick. Thank you for making me a part of your day. Thanks for spending time with us today. What a cool reading corner this was. I finally released my own stuff. So cool. I was very nervous about it, but I'm happy that it was received well. And I'm definitely going to write more. I don't know how much longer it'll be like before I actually do write more, but we'll see. I've got a lot on my plate, as we know. But one of the reasons I read this is because I've literally been thinking about it nonstop in the waking hours before I fall asleep as to I should write more, and then finally I, plucked up the courage to actually read this stuff to you. So just really, really cool. that I have that opportunity. Thank you for all your feedback. Thank you for reading along with me with Alpherg's thing. I love how that's developed as well. That's super cool. And yeah, I just, I can't wait for the next one. So thank you all very much. Make sure to interact with the stream, do all those things, and I will see you all in about 8 hours from now, where we play Mass Effect. We read all the lore that the Shadow Broker has in store for us, and then it's time to do the last little bits of the game where we go into the Reaper IFF, and then we finally hit the Omega 4 relay once we're done. So, thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day, no matter where you are in the world, morning, evening, or afternoon. I hope it's great. Make sure that you give yourself a compliment today. Drink enough water, stay hydrated, be kind to yourself than you're currently being, and I'll see you in the next stream where we do it all over again. Take care!